Day parade delayed due to high winds forecast. It has now got underway in central London, with thousands of revellers braving the weather. Forecasters are predicting 50-mile-per-hour gusts in London on New Year's Day as wind and rain sparks travel disruption in the UK. Domestic energy prices have risen, with more pain for bill payers set to come. The second increase in Ofgem's price cap this winter takes effect today, and it means someone paying by direct debit and using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £1,738 a year. That is a £21 a year more increase than under the previous cap, so bill payers are being urged to submit a meter reading to avoid overpaying on estimated usage. Bills are about 50% higher than pre-COVID levels, and analysts predict they will rise by a further 3% in April. To Scarborough now, where brave people are ringing in New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers helping raise thousands of pounds for charity. Thousands turn out on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them on their way into the cold North Sea. Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley is on the beach in Scarborough.
New Year's Day dip in Scarborough, where 150 swimmers have taken to the North Sea. Here you may be able to see the crowds that have turned out. Hundreds of people have come to the beach here to encourage people to take the dip, and it's all about charity. It's something that's been arranged by the Scarborough Lions. They take a fee for people to enter that goes towards charity, and then many people here are raising money for charity through doing this New Year's Day dip. It's certainly attracted a lot of crowd. You can see some people here in the crowd in fancy dress. There's been a competition for the best dressed, and we can see people coming out of the water now who have taken part.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, at least 10 people have been killed and 30 more injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of this morning. The driver then got out of the vehicle and started firing a weapon, and police returned fire, with a local police superintendent saying that the gunman was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. And the FBI has since taken over the investigation and say they are investigating this now as an act of terrorism, with the suspect being declared deceased on the scene. We can now speak with the US political commentator Lee Cohen. Lee, welcome to the show and a very happy new year to you. Shame it's under such sad circumstances. A terrible incident has struck America. The FBI now in the last few moments confirming they are treating this as an act of terrorism. What more do we know?
Well, Martin, thanks for having me, and Happy New Year to you and your audience. What was supposed to be a day of celebration and hope has tragically turned into one of shock and grief for New Orleans and more broadly for America. This is so heartbreaking. People from all over our country, and I know my British friends, are joining us in sending our deepest condolences to the families of the victims. And as you said, it was released last hour that the suspect is dead, so God's will be done, having passed away after exchanging gunfire with the police. It's unknown whether he was hit by an officer or ended his own life at this moment.
And we know that 2 police officers were injured in that exchange and they're hospitalised, but we believe they're stable. So mercifully, it seems at this stage, Lee, there are no casualties, at least on the police side, although, of course, there will be pedestrians who were hit at some velocity, and then the exchange of gunfire after that, tragic as it was. And questions will now be asked, as we saw in Germany at the street market there, how this was able to happen. A known gathering spot, a world-famous tourist event. It's New Year's Eve. You know, it would have been high on any target list of any potential terror attack, if that's what it is. And already questions are being asked about the state of the barriers. Were there anti-crash barriers in place? Were they circumnavigated? There'll be a huge amount of questions asked around that topic, Lee Cohen.
Well, indeed. And this will surely cause law enforcement to evaluate security protocols to hopefully head off such horrific events from happening in future, and particularly looking at new measures to enhance safety at large public gatherings and events, so-called soft targets. They must learn from this and strengthen their response. But Martin, I'm glad you brought up the incident in Germany, because often I hear from my friends outside of the United States what a violent society is the United States. And I know we have a lot of gun violence, tragically and sadly. But incidents like these are, of course, not confined to the United States, as we saw in the horrible attack at the Christmas market in Germany. And, you know, sadly, there's mental illness and terrorist impulses all over the world. It's not confined just to my country.
And Lee Cohen, as tragic as this was, evidence is emerging it could have been worse. In the back of that pickup truck, reports coming out of improvised explosive devices that were rigged up. We don't know if they were able to be detonated. They didn't mercifully go off. But again, the investigation area now, the whole area has been treated as a crime scene. We heard earlier on the mayor, the police chief calling for everybody to stay 8 blocks away from Bourbon Street in every direction. So every approach will be analysed, every piece of evidence will be analysed, and some of the videos coming out, we've got some pictures there, I think, live now from that. That's not live, that's from earlier on, of New Orleans. The area was very quickly cleared by police on horseback. Again, a very highly attended event. Mercifully, police were present and able to deal with this perpetrator as quickly as possible. So now the identification of this individual will be the big question. We don't know the motivation. We shouldn't speculate about the motivation. As you said, these kind of events aren't unusual in Europe. The firearms makes it more of an event that's more likely to happen in America. Reports of there being assault-style weapons. The videos you can hear certainly sound like rapid-fire weapons going off. Reports, again, that the gunman had armour on him. So it seems, from the evidence that's emerging, to have been pre-planned, premeditated, and a highly sophisticated piece of terror. And as the police superintendent, Anne Kirkpatrick, said, this suspect was hell-bent on conducting carnage.
Indeed. And one thing that I think bears mentioning, perhaps for viewers who are not familiar with the area, this is an attack on New Orleans' beloved French Quarter, Martin, a place that holds a special significance to both residents and visitors from across the globe. It's really deeply shaken the sense of security in one of America's major cities, and that extends to all of our country, especially, as we already said, during what should have been a joyful, hopeful cause for celebration in the New Year's Day.
And we have live pictures on our screens there now, Lee Cohen, of a heavy police presence. Now daylight, of course, is upon the area, and we're expecting a full police press conference around about 5 p.m. And of course, we'll have that live on GB News. We're expecting more details to emerge, potentially, of the perpetrator and perhaps the reasoning behind this. That's 5 p.m. That'll be live here on GB News. Thanks very much for joining us. And that's the American political commentator, friend of the show. Thank you. Happy New Year again to you, Lee Cohen. Thank you. Now moving back to domestic politics here in Blighty. In his first New Year's message from Downing Street, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has declared that the UK will embark on a year of rebuilding and rediscovering the great nation that we are in 2025.
2024 was a year of change. Not sadly in the football, another agonisingly close shave for England, but change in politics with the election of this Labour government in July. And more importantly, with the work of change that we've begun. The minimum wage raised by a record amount, wages up more broadly, returns of foreign national criminals up 20%, billions of pounds worth of new projects in clean British energy, making our country more secure, and £25 billion invested in our NHS, starting to cut waiting lists in your local hospital. Now, I know there's still so much more to do, and that for many people it's hard to think about the future when you spend all of your time fighting to get through the week. So I want to be clear, until you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you.
Now, I know it's New Year's Day and you probably struggled to stay awake during that, but wakey, wakey, let's have some fun back here in the studio because I'm joined by the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Welcome to the studio, both of you. Kane, I'm going to start with you. Why did he have to mention England losing at football in the opening sentence? Like straight away, it like sapped all the energy.
You know what he's like, he's doom, gloom, you know, that's his whole spiel, isn't it, really? And, I mean, really what I would say is Labour and Keir Starmer keep talking about how they were elected on a promise of change. Well, actually, what they have delivered is a promise of pain for millions of people out there. They have taken away the winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners. They are deliberately destroying family farms in the UK. And, you know, they are actually taxing businesses to a staggering amount, which is really, really terrible for this country and for our economy. So, you know, I also think he just looks a bit scruffy, quite frankly, you know. Yep. So put a tie on.
Exactly.
No, we all have to.
Exactly.
You know, you're the Prime Minister. You're meant to represent this country. You know, you can at least look smart while doing it.
Sarah Louise, let's bring you in now. One line, I watched the full thing, you know, for my sins, and one line that leapt out is that he did say immigration reduced. Only 2 words, but he did touch upon it. And it seems to be the elephant in the room that he never really gets around to. Do you think on that particular point you've got any faith in him delivering?
Absolutely not. And the fact was it was buried within that turgid speech, which we just heard, which put most people to sleep listening to it. So, as you said there, the word was reduced, immigration reduced. He didn't go in hard on immigration and migration the way that we heard Nigel Farage when it was his speech. There was no comparison between the two men when you looked at both of them. Keir's was dull, flaccid, much like his leadership today. And the fact, who was advising him on his aesthetics and styling? They obviously don't like him. As you pointed out, he looks scruffy. He couldn't be bothered to put a tie on. He looked tired, paunchy.
Do you know what's happened as well? Like, in that speech, he had a union flag behind him.
Yep.
He's the Prime Minister. People have been complaining about the fact he had a union flag behind him, as if you know, a Prime Minister on New Year's Eve shouldn't be allowed to have a union flag behind him.
Well, we should see the Union Jack.
You know?
I was annoyed that there was only one.
Yeah.
I want more.
Yes, we want more.
Union flag.
We do want more. But yes, it was interesting, that point that he sort of buried it within the speech. So it's almost like he's paying lip service to what he thinks is a small portion of the electorate, when actually it's most of the electorate 100%. Who are worried about net migration and the illegal immigrants which are coming into this country every single day across the Channel.
And there's one point there, Kane, to bring you back in, that doesn't add up for me. And this notion of we're going to build 1.5 million new homes. Well, the last slot said that as well. But the point is, if you let 1 million people into your country per year, those homes have gone.
Well, exactly.
They've gone. There's not a single home going to come onto the market for the existing population if we can't control our borders. The two, to me, logically seem intrinsically linked, and yet the penny just doesn't seem to be dropping.
100% they're linked. If you can't see how they are linked, then, you know, one, you don't deserve to be in politics, and two, you have no idea what's going on in this country, because, you know, housing is a massive issue for many, many people. You know, whether you are on the side of, you know, wanting more homes because, you know, we need more homes for our younger people, or you're on the side of, you know, actually, we've had a load of housing in our area and, you know, we're not seeing that across the country. There's two sides of this story. But what I would say is this, is what we haven't done for so long is build the right sort of homes for the people of those localities. That's one of the main problems with housing, is not building the right sort of homes. 4-bedroom houses, you know, for people who can move out of London, sell their 2-bedroom flat for £500,000 and come down to somewhere like Kent, where I'm from, and get a lovely 4-bedroom property. But, you know, this is the problem that I think both Labour and the Conservatives have paid lip service on these issues.
They failed to tackle it.
Yeah, they have. And I do think there needs to be a bit more of a radical approach.
Thank you very much, Sarah Louise Robertson and Kane Blackwell. And at 4 o'clock, we will be applying the same scalpel-like scrutiny to Kemi Badenoch's speech. And then at 5 o'clock, we'll be looking at the speech of the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage. So stick around with us. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you in the next hour. If you didn't get everything on your Christmas list this year, then how about 50 grand in tax-free cash as a New Year's present, courtesy of us here at GB News, because it really could all be yours in our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. And here's the details that you need to enter.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? £50,000 is an amazing amount of money, and it could be all yours. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, coming up throughout the show, we're getting all the latest in the reaction to the horrific attack, which is now being treated as a terror attack, in which at least 10 people have been killed and 35 more injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of this morning. All the latest on that with a live press conference expected around about 5 p.m. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles.
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world. And the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
GoFundMe
page yet?
We've got social media platforms at
Right.
The Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 3:24 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News on New Year's Day. And at least 10 people have been killed and 35 more injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. Well, the FBI has since taken over the investigation and say that they are now investigating an act of terrorism. And the New Orleans Police Department have confirmed that the suspect was declared deceased on the scene. And I'm joined in the studio to discuss this further with the chair of the Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, welcome to the show and a happy new year. So all eyes now are on 5 p.m. We're expecting a press conference. We're expecting to learn more information. We understand that the individual is deceased. Sounds like he was shot dead by police at the scene. What do you think we're going to learn at 5? Will we learn more about the guy's, who he was, his modus operandi? What do you think we're going to get?
I hope so, but I think there might be some caution because there's a big football game tonight, American football game, which will occur around 1 a.m. our time here. But it's the Sugar Bowl, which is part of the college football playoff system now. You have Georgia, University of Georgia versus Notre Dame. So, you know, number 2 against number 5. Both schools are known to travel well. In other words, their fans often travel to bowl games. So you'll see 74,000 people at the stadium tonight. So I think the first challenge for the police and the FBI right now is just to make sure that this was a lone wolf, to make sure there's no other potential connections to this terrorist, and if there is, act accordingly. I would hope that they actually provide some information. That might be helpful for even people, citizens that are attending the game or near the game, to keep their eye out for certain types.
And we have live pictures on the scene there. You can see there's a huge police presence. They've asked for an 8-block kind of quarantine zone away from there. They're telling people to stay away. The entire area has been treated as an active live crime scene. So as we said there, we'll learn much more at 5 o'clock. And it's a great point there, Greg. 74,000 people, that in itself could be a target. And what the police won't want to do at 5 o'clock is spook that crowd, because who knows what may happen then. Greg Swenson, thank you very much for joining us. And we'll speak to you again later in the show. And you'll be joining us for that live press conference for your expert analysis then. Thank you, Greg. Now, moving on, private schools in Britain are increasing their fees today by more than the government predicted as its VAT raid takes effect. Sir Keir Starmer's controversial move to apply 20% VAT to private schools was designed to boost the state sector, with the tax increase set to fund measures including more teachers. But will that happen? Let's now speak with the teacher, the maths teacher, Bobby Siegel. Bobby, a very, very happy new year to you. Now, you probably need a bit of cheering up the way West Ham are playing at the moment. I digress. Bobby, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. So look, on the one hand, the government are saying this will raise £1.7 billion, which is much needed to fund state schools. But of course, the private schools today are defying the government and in many instances passing the entire sum onto fee-paying students. And what I've said all along is that won't bother the richest students, it won't bother the richest parents, but it could force out the aspirational, hard-working middle classes, who I've said all along could be the ones who lose out in this entire system.
So happy New Year, Martin, and to all our viewers here. So yes, the intention behind the policy was raising funds, resources for the state sector, which we know has historical issues in education, so that they can recruit more teachers. But again, I live in the real world. I know that the impact of this won't be on the students that go to the Etons. Again, I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to Eton from a local state school for my sixth form studies. It's not going to impact those students, the ones attending Eton and Winchester, Westminster, Harrow. It'll impact the students at the sort of borderline independent schools. Again, most independent schools don't charge 40, 50 grand. Some of them charge anything between 5 to 10K. So those ones are the ones where the parents who are middle class, that will be impacted. And again, looking at the sort of bigger picture, I was actually looking at the median income, the middle person in the UK, and it's 32K. So for the median person, actually, they probably can't even consider a 3K or 5K or 10K independent school fees, but this is going to impact middle-class parents. And I think the government's got to work out how they can make sure that these families are supported if and when they transition to the state sector.
And Bobby, I know something you're very passionate about are kids with special needs and the extra TLC that they need. And there are reports coming out that a lot of parents with special needs children send them to private schools where they have typically lower class sizes. They're able to have more dedicated care and attention. And there are alarm bells going out today saying that some of those more vulnerable children might now be forced back into the state sector where invariably their education will suffer.
So I think my biggest concern about this policy is actually, I think the long-term trend is, yeah, we do need a better state system for everyone. And this is part of that, you know, if you're designing a system from scratch. But I think the biggest casualties will be those students you mentioned, those from SEN, special educational needs. And many parents, for various reasons, because maybe they can't find the right fit or the right support in a state school or something near them, they choose to save up and spend extra money on their child to send them to an independent school that can look after their children's needs. So I think these children, there is going to be a serious issue. I would like to think, if not that I'll be Education Secretary, if I was in the Education Secretary's position, I would make sure I'd have some sort of exemption for these students with special needs, because they're not necessarily attending independent schools to, you know, get privilege or these other benefits that being in this elite circle will be. They're going because actually their kids won't even get the basic needs possibly met in some state schools. So I think my heart goes out to those families with the special educational needs.
Bobby, you've absolutely nailed it, mate. Bang on the money. And, you know, full disclosure, I went to what I guess you'd call a bit of a SYNC comprehensive. My kids go to state schools, but I've also done a lot of work in private schools. And a lot of them, I think, are absolutely amazing places. And the thing that strikes me, and you know yourself, is that I've sat down and had lunch with so many heads at those schools, and they tell me they could fill their entire schools with overseas students if they wanted, who would pay the top brass. It wouldn't affect any of them. But those who are getting forced out of the system by this, back to my original point, are those more aspirational parents, often ethnic minority parents in Britain who want the best for their children. They work all hours God sent to get the very, very, very best. Bobby Seagull, I fear that they're going to be squeezed out of the equation.
Yes, I think that's probably ultimately where the hit will lie. Again, when we look at the UK, our education institutions, our universities and our independent schools are regarded as world beaters. People from all across the world, you know, from the Middle East, from Russia, from India, they'll send their kids to our schools. So clearly there's something really valuable. And it would be a shame if this policy meant that our schools just get taken over by students from abroad and our British students, as it were, don't get the benefit. But again, I think short term, I definitely think, and maybe in the medium term, there'll be pain. But I really hope that long term, the aim is to boost the state sector, because ultimately, if you have a great state sector, then the whole country benefits, you know, our arts, our culture, our scientists. But I think short term, we will see pain from this.
Bobby Seagull, beautiful stuff. And look, I admire your optimism, your glass half full attitude. You must need to believe in miracles being a West Ham fan at the moment. Bobby Seagull, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. You take care. My name, and have a very, very happy New Year. Bobby Seagull, thank you. And loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including we'll get more reaction to that horrific attack in which at least 10 people have now been confirmed as killed and 35 more injured after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of New Year's Day in the morning. But first, it's time for your headlines, and here's Sophia Wenser.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 3:32. The suspect in the New Orleans attack that killed 10 people today is dead, according to the city's police force. The FBI are investigating this morning's deadly attack as an act of terrorism. At least 35 people have been injured after the man drove a pickup truck into a large crowd on the corner of the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. Local police have been giving an update and saying the pickup truck was driven at a very fast pace and it was very intentional behaviour. They said the driver of the vehicle got out and opened fire on police, with 2 officers shot but in a stable condition, while the suspect was declared dead. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time, and people are being asked to stay away from the scene. In other news, following a stormy New Year's Eve, the wild weather looks set to continue, with London's New Year's Day parade delayed due to high winds. It has now got underway in central London, with thousands of revellers braving the weather. Forecasters are predicting 50-mile-an-hour gusts in London on New Year's Day, as wind and rain spark travel disruption in the UK. Data has now been extracted from the black box from the doomed Jeju airplane disaster that killed 179 people. The data from the cockpit voice recorder will now be converted into an audio file, while the second black box, a flight data recorder, will be sent to the US for analysis. Investigators hope the information they find will provide insights about the crucial moments leading up to the tragedy. All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew were killed on Sunday when the passenger jet crash-landed at Muan International Airport and slammed into a concrete embankment at the end of the runway, where it burst into flames. And to Scarborough now, where brave people are ringing in New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers, helping raise thousands of pounds to help the most in need in the Scarborough community. Hundreds turned out today on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them on their way into the cold North Sea. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, things will turn much colder across the UK. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, but some snow and ice in places as well. Low pressure is moving away to the south and east of the UK now, taking wind and rain with it, allowing a northerly airstream to become established across the UK, and this will introduce some wintry hazards as we go through the coming few days. Wet and windy weather then clearing away to the southeast as we go through the evening. Some wintry showers across the central slice of the UK, also easing as we go through the overnight period. So showers becoming mainly confined to areas exposed to the north to northwesterly airstream. And again, those showers will be wintry in places, especially across the hills towards the north, but to some lower levels in places as well. A widespread frost forming, temperatures in towns and cities below freezing, down to -7 or -8 in a few parts of Scotland, and there'll be some ice around to start the day on Thursday as well. So starting Thursday then, further wintry showers moving in from the north into the northern parts of Scotland, a mixture of hail, sleet and some snow in places. Southern parts of Scotland mostly fine to start the day, some clear weather but very chilly here, some frost and some ice in places. A few wintry showers into Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland seeing the best of the quieter weather to start the day here. A few showers also across the Irish Sea areas, down across North Sea coastal areas of eastern England, but elsewhere lots of sunshine around, and that's the way of things as we go through Thursday. There will be plenty of sunshine, certainly across inland areas, but it will be a cold day wherever you are with a north to northwesterly wind blowing, and further showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream, particularly into northern Scotland, down across parts of Northern Ireland, the west of England, and down some North Sea coasts at times too. Temperatures are at the very best up to 6 or 7 degrees, but add on the effect of that north to northwesterly wind and feeling close to, if not below freezing in 1 or 2 places. As we go into the evening, the showers will tend to become more and more confined to those coasts, so a frost and some ice forming again as we go into the overnight period. Again, a very cold night developing, and we hold on to a mixture of sunshine and wintry showers on Friday, with a risk of some more persistent rain and some snow moving in from the southwest as we go into the weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:38 with me, Martin Daubney, on New Year's Day here on GB News. Now, what are your new resolutions for the new year? Do you have any at all, or is it trying to shed the pounds? Mine is. Or you may have accumulated during the festive period. All that Port and Stilton finally wants payback. And if so, how would you like to find out how to lose weight quickly? Well, here's the man who can help us with the plan. Let's ask the former presenter of Fat Feminist, Steve Miller. Great friend of the show, and a very, very happy and peaceful and prosperous New Year to Steve. Wonderful to see you. Look, everybody at this time of the year looks in the mirror and thinks, I could do better there. The short answer is eat less cake, but I'm assuming it's a bit more complicated than that. Tell us, how do we bust those pounds?
Yes, and if you want to feel motivated, eat cake naked in a mirror. I mean, listen, we've all indulged over Christmas. We've all piled some on. And at this time of year, we always talk about losing weight. It's one of those things. What I would say to the viewers and the listeners, though, is to remember that really the battle is not about knowing what to eat. It's about your mindset and your motivation. And when we've got the motivation, we can keep in control. So I've got a few things that I'm going to give out. So the first one, and they're slightly unusual. The first one is to have that dreaded fat photo with you at all times. We've all got one, the one where we look at ourselves and think, holy God, I need to shift a few. Now, when you're in times of temptation, have a look at that and make that, motivate you away from, perhaps dialing in a takeaway and so forth. The second one, a little bit similar, is to have warning signs in places of danger. Now, those warning signs can be as brash as you want them to be, or they can be fun. So if you want to put little pickers, wear big knickers on your warning sign, then do that. Warning signs. Now, with your warning signs, have those on the cupboards, on the fridge, in the car, because you know what it's like when we get the petrol, we're tempted to have a munch. So have them in the car, have them on the office desk at work as well. So that's the second one. Now, the third one is slightly controversial, but it helps. Deliberately observe fat people's habits. Not the person. I'm not saying judging the person, their habits. And let those habits motivate you away from doing the same. So look at the way, how fast people eat. Look at what they are eating. Look at how they walk, because they're too fat. They're walking like a snail, could never be a racehorse. So it's not about being cruel to the person. It's looking at those habits and saying, hey, up, I'm not going there. The fourth one might sound a bit bonkers, but it is based on cognitive behavior therapy, which is to actually mentally talk to the food. So what you're actually doing here is, if you're seeing a food, or you've got a buffet in front of you, is you're telling yourself, actually, I'm in control now. I am the boss, and this is what I'm going to do. So tell the donut to do one in your head. What we're doing here is you're actually conditioning your mind to regain control over the food. The fifth one is also what you're saying to yourself, telling yourself that you're too gorgeous to be fat, but also telling people that are the feeders around you, oh, go on, it won't hurt you to have another slice of that. Tell them, actually turn around and just say, I am too gorgeous to be fat, and that's why I'm not having it. It will shock them. Their eyes will be like saucers, but it does not help you. And I have to say, the other one is try not to listen to Starmer too much, because I'm afraid that New Year's message, well, it was like listening, all those promises, we've lost trust. It was like looking at a den of depression, to be quite frank. So yes, those are some practical things to do in terms of helping your mindset and your motivation actually go forward and manage the weight. The other thing is avoid diets. They're too restrictive. They can cost a lot of money. And also, rather than that, live 80-20. Eat well 80% of the time, and 20% of the time, have a bit of what you fancy. When it comes to the fat jabs that people are talking to me about all the time, I have cautionary notes. Look at the side effects. They are very concerning. And instead of that, maybe consider something that's brand new, called the Hypno Jab. Yes, developed by yours truly.
What's that? What is Hypno Jab?
Hypnosis combines three things. Yes, I wanted to bring and develop for the market something that was very similar in terms of process to the medical jab, but it includes hypnosis and 80-20 meal planning and motivational control, where you actually do, it's like a virtual thing that you use the power of your mind. We are what we think, and so forth. It takes that logic. Yes, evidence-based. Hypnosis has a good evidence base for weight management, but it does not work on its own. You have to have an 80-20 meal planning system, and you have to also have motivational tools.
Steve, I'm going to take you up on that challenge. Could I be a guinea pig? Could I do that?
Well, you don't look very fat to me.
Well, it's very slimming being on telly. I've got corset on. I've got every trick in the book. On a serious point, I'd like to shed a few pounds.
Yes, of course.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Listen. I will send it you because it's audio based, and you can see what you think. If you think it's a load of old tosh, you can tell me. You know, I'm not precious, but I have to say the results that I'm finding it's getting are very, very positive. I launched it last year. Didn't rant on about it because I wanted to make sure that there was some evidence with it, which there now is. So there you go.
Right.
And can I finish on this point as well? As well for the nation. Listen, viewers and listeners. Can we also stop moaning about how hard it is all the time? Because honestly, that's not going to do you any good. Have some aspiration. Create your inner aspiration. Set your goals for the future. Yes, it is about mind over platter.
Beautiful stuff. Excellent, Steve Miller. Always a pleasure, never a chore.
Welcome.
Great stuff, and I'm going to take you up on that offer, mate. Wonderful stuff, Steve Miller. Great friend of the show, and a very, very happy new year. Inspiring stuff. Cheers, mate. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, and who can blame you? And here's the weather forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest GB News winter sun forecast, and for some places, Madeira for example, it is going to be relatively warm to end the week. Lots of dry weather around some parts of southern Europe, but a different story across parts of Italy, Croatia into Greece. A little bit of rain pushing its way through here. Mostly dry across central and southern parts of Spain, a little bit wetter further north, and like I said, for Madeira, temperatures on the rise, getting into the low 20s by the end of the week. Elsewhere, temperatures nearer normal for the time of year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Coming up, an inspiring sight as hundreds of beacons of hope were lit last night across the UK by British farmers to show solidarity and that they will continue the fight in 2025 against the government's inheritance tax raid. That's next with me, Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
In 2020, after almost 80 years, Oxford University's Pitt Rivers Museum removed its famous collection of shrunken heads with sewn-up lips and eyes made by the South American Shuar and Ashwar people. How do museums decide what should be shown and what should be confined to storage? Can controversial exhibits be left on display with suitable contextualisation in captions? Who would want to be a curator facing such controversial questions? For review, I'm delighted to be joined by journalist Eitan Smallman. Welcome to GB News. I think many people, when they hear that we're going to discuss museums or art galleries, think that it's going to be, that wokery question. But it strikes me, and I think it strikes you too, that this is not just about wokery at all. There are some really interesting ethical questions here. For example, I mean, let's start with this one, and there are several examples of it. Should we be displaying human bodies, the remains of human beings? Should we be displaying them in museums?
Absolutely. It's not just the usual suspects, young snowflakes, who are objecting to these things. There are just naturally cultural shifts, and people of all ages and all political persuasions may feel uneasy about displaying human remains of any kind, especially human remains that have been taken against the will of the communities or taken violently. Hilary Mantel led a campaign to remove a 7-foot 7-inch skeleton of Charles Byrne, known as the Irish Giant, from the Hunterian Museum. He had specifically said that he didn't want to be displayed and didn't want to be taken by anatomists, and yet was displayed for a couple of hundred years until a couple of years ago. He hasn't had the burial he requested, but he's no longer on public display.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support. It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now it's a new year, but it's the same angry farmers as last night. Hundreds of beacons of hope were lit across the UK by farmers, and there's one on your screen now. It was designed to show solidarity and that farmers will continue to fight in 2025 against the government's changes to inheritance tax. Now, that bonfire there was sent to me by the organisers of this, Martin Williams out of Herefordshire. Ollie Harrison lit a magnificent one in Tarbuck. And Clive Bailey, great friend of the show, he told me he had too much red wine and forgot to film it. But beautiful stuff. The heart was in the right place. And to discuss this magnificent gesture, I'm joined back in the studio again by the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Guys, welcome back to the show. Sarah Louise, going to start with you this time. So over 4,000 of these bonfires lit last night. If you look at a map, it was literally from the Highlands, the islands of the tip of the Highlands, right the way down to Cornwall, sending out a message. A lot of people saying, well, lighting bonfires, what's that going to do? But they tell me this is a message of intent, it's a message of unification, and it's a message that they're ready for action in 2025. The big question is the Labour Party going to listen?
I don't think they are, and that's what's really, really worrying. The farming community has never been under attack as much as it is at the moment. Suicide rates are through the roof among the farming and agricultural community. In 2019, there was 102 suicides from farmers. People also, I think, don't realise the poverty that farmers are struggling with. This is a real issue that's going on. Did you know that the average livestock farm, the salary that they draw from that is between £9,000 and £22,000 a year. Most farms on average are in £200,000 in debt. For Rachel Reeves to come along and push this awful, awful tax on farmers, which is going to drive more of them into poverty, drive more of them into suicide, affect their mental health more. We're going to lose more farms. This is then going to impact on our country in terms of agriculture, sustainability, our food production, everything. It is the most crippling, craziest tax that is going to hit farmers and the agricultural community so hard. And it's only expected to raise £115 million a year. That's nothing, Martin, in the grand scheme of things.
Kane Blackwell, let's bring you in. And just to point out that those pictures on screen there, they were from Cumbria, they were from Tarbuck, they were from Herefordshire, and the map we had on our screen there earlier, you can see this is the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. Kane Blackwell, beg your pardon, this is sending out a message that they're not going to give up easily. Do you think they need to take it to the next stage? Do you think they need to go a bit more gilet jaune, a bit more French about it?
Well, I don't think we need to become French, but, you know, about most things. But, I mean, I just want to commend the farmers for what they have done. I think they have created a really powerful but peaceful movement and protest. You know, I work in Westminster day to day, and, you know, it was amazing to go down and see all the tractors and the speech of the farmers as well. And, you know, there's so many young people, so many young farmers that it's their futures being ripped out of their hands. That's the problem for so many farmers, that it's actually about the future, the next generation that are going to, you know, increase our food security, all of that sort of stuff. And without them, you know, we're nothing. No food, no farmers.
Yeah, you know, one of the most moving moments, I think, of my broadcasting year here on GB News was Clive Bailey, the farmer who came in. He's out of Lichfield. His son was with him, his Henry, 12, 3 generations of farming. And Henry came in the studio, a 12-year-old lad, and just said, I want to be a farmer, and this government is taking that away from me. You know, it was really, really moving to actually get it contextualised like that, because as you quite rightly say, I think they treat it as an abstract thing. It's not an abstract.
It's not.
It's
94%.
We have to move on. We've simply run out of time, but we'll get you back in the next hour. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sarah Louise Robertson and Kane Blackwell. Now, coming up, we'll have all the latest on the horrific attack in New Orleans, which is now being treated as an act of terror, with me, Martin Dalby, on GB News, Britain's news channel. There's your weather with Mocha.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, things will turn much colder across the UK. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, but some snow and ice in places as well. Low pressure's moving away to the south and east of the UK now, taking wind and rain with it, allowing a northerly airstream to become established across the UK, and this will introduce some wintry hazards as we go through the coming few days. Wet and windy weather then clearing away to the southeast as we go through the evening. Some wintry showers across the central slice of the UK, also easing as we go through the overnight period. So showers becoming mainly confined to areas exposed to the north to northwesterly airstream. And again, those showers will be wintry in places, especially across the hills towards the north, but to some lower levels in places as well. A widespread frost forming, temperatures in towns and cities below freezing, down to -7 or -8 in a few parts of Scotland, and there'll be some ice around to start the day on Thursday as well. So starting Thursday then, further wintry showers moving in from the north into the northern parts of Scotland, a mixture of hail, sleet and some snow in places. Southern parts of Scotland mostly fine to start the day, some clear weather but very chilly here, some frost and some ice in places. A few wintry showers into Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland seeing the best of the quieter weather to start the day here. A few showers also across the Irish Sea areas, down across North Sea coastal areas of eastern England, but elsewhere lots of sunshine around, and that's the way of things as we go through Thursday. There will be plenty of sunshine, certainly across inland areas, but it will be a cold day wherever you are with a north to northwesterly wind blowing, and further showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream, particularly into northern Scotland, down across parts of Northern Ireland, the west of England, and down some North Sea coasts at times too. Temperatures are at the very best up to 6 or 7 degrees, but add on the effect of that north to northwesterly wind and feeling close to, if not below freezing in one or two places. As we go into the evening, the showers will tend to become more and more confined to those coasts, so a frost and some ice forming again as we go into the overnight period. Again, a very cold night developing, and we hold on to a mixture of sunshine and wintry showers on Friday, with a risk of some more persistent rain and some snow moving in from the southwest as we go into the weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
1 in 20 people are diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder across the UK.
Yes, Healthwatch has revealed that men are more likely to suffer from this than women. Did you know?
Triggers apparently include a decrease in daylight hours, which is certainly happening around about now. If you're leaving the office, it's dark. When you come home, it's dark, as well as the falling temperatures.
Yes, and both of those things happen a lot, don't they, here in Britain? So how can we combat the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder? Well, to discuss this, we're joined now by Dr. Andreas Fonseca, the founder and director of Thrive Mental Wellbeing. Really good to see you this morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, there'll be lots of people watching and listening this morning and saying, what a load of rubbish. It's always been cold in this country. It's always been dark. What is seasonal affective disorder? is it really a thing?
Well, it is a thing, and it's been known for quite some time. This is not new, really. It is a form of depression. That's what it is. And it's got specific characteristics that kind of differentiate it from other forms of depression. So the reason probably we're talking more about it is because it's basically people are more aware of it and they're recognizing it more. So before you used to be sort of just saying this person's got depression, now you have some specific things to look at that can differentiate it from other kinds of depression, which is quite useful because it's got some specific forms of treatment. So the things that are different about seasonal affective disorder are that for the diagnosis you need 2 years in which you only have episodes during either the late autumn or early winter. So that's when they start, and they fade away by late spring, summer. Early summer. So that's how it works. And you cannot have any episodes at any other time. So it has to be seasonal, specifically seasonal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you and a happy new year. It's 4 p.m. on 2025, the first day of the year with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. We'll bring you all the very latest until 6 p.m. On today's show, 10 people have now been confirmed killed and 35 more injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. Suspect has been confirmed dead at the scene, and the FBI are now investigating this as an act of terrorism. We'll bring you the latest from New Orleans throughout today's show. And the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, has issued this New Year's message.
The party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
A defiant message there from Kemi Badenoch, but what does she mean by watch this space? And can she counter the threat, the surging threat of Nigel Farage and reform in 2025? And it's that dreaded day of the year when we all notice the flab, the wheezing and the wrinkles. Well, to help you and, to be honest, me, get fitter in 2025, we've got a gang of experts to help you shed the pounds, stub out the ciggies and transform you from a couch potato into a hot potato. That's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. I hope you had a fantastic evening last night's New Year's Eve and your 2025 getting off to a cracking start. I wish you all a peaceful and prosperous New Year, and thank you very, very much for your continued support here on GB News. It really does mean the world to us. Now, of course, at 5 o'clock in around about an hour's time, we'll be crossing live to New Orleans. We're expecting a full police press conference for the latest on the incident there, now being confirmed, being treated as an act of terrorism, where we learn more about the perpetrator who has been confirmed dead, eliminated at the scene in that exchange of fire with the police. That's at 5 p.m. Now, on a lighter note, in the previous hour, we had Steve Miller on the show telling us how to lose the pounds. And one of his recommendations, which caught me by surprise, was putting notes on your food, telling you not to eat it. Well, look at this. We got sent this picture in by Danny Kelly. Danny, of course, is a great, great friend of the show. He's a legend, a used car dealer and a hugely amazing fella. Look at that. He's got a note on his mince pies in his fridge. He said he's been doing this for years. He says, "Do not eat that, you fat idiot. Happy New Year." Danny Kelly is an inspiration to others. And it certainly gave us a nice little snigger here at GB News on the 1st of January. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, get in touch if you've got any funny pictures of how you help yourself to lose weight. What about that shameful, overweight, fat picture, which Steve Miller says is the #1 motivator, the picture of you at your worst? He said, carry it at all times. Are you brave enough to send us yours? He even said that the best way to lose weight is to eat cake naked. Please don't send any pictures of that. But get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Moving on, it's your headlines, and here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines. At least 10 people have been killed after a truck ploughed through a crowd celebrating the New Year in New Orleans. The FBI are investigating this morning's deadly attack as an act of terrorism. At least 35 people have been injured after the man drove a pickup truck into a large crowd on the corner of the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. Local police have been giving an update and saying the pickup truck was driven at a very fast pace and it was very intentional behaviour. They said the driver of the vehicle got out and opened fire on police, with 2 officers shot but in a stable condition, while the suspect was declared dead. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time, and people are being asked to stay away from the scene. In other news now, Sir Keir Starmer has hailed 2024 as a year of change as he shared his first New Year message as Prime Minister. Sir Keir declared that the UK will embark on a year of rebuilding and rediscovering the great nation we are in 2025.
Until you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you.
But the Conservatives have accused Labour of offering change for the worse, as Kemi Badenoch used her own New Year's message to warn that efforts to turn around the Tory fortunes would be bumpy.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
Meanwhile, following a stormy New Year's Eve, the wild weather looks set to continue, with London's New Year's Day parade delayed due to high winds. It has now got underway in central London, with thousands of revellers braving the weather. Forecasters are predicting 50-mile-an-hour gusts in London on New Year's Day, as wind and rain spark travel disruption in the UK. Domestic energy prices have risen, with more pain for bill payers set to come. The second increase in Ofgem's price cap this winter takes effect today and means someone paying by direct debit and using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £1,738 a year. That is a £21 a year increase under the previous cap, so bill payers are being urged to submit meter readings to avoid overpaying on estimated usage. Bills are about 50% higher than pre-COVID levels, and analysts predict they will rise again further by 3% in April. Data has now been extracted from the black box from the doomed Jeju Air plane disaster that killed 179 people. The data from the cockpit voice recorder will now be converted into an audio file, while a second black box, a flight data recorder, will be sent to the US for analysis. Investigators hope information they find will provide insights about the crucial moments leading up to the tragedy. All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew were killed on Sunday when the passenger jet crash-landed at Muan International Airport and slammed into a concrete embankment at the end of the runway, where it burst into flames. And to Scarborough now, where brave people have been ringing in New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers, helping raise thousands of pounds to help those most in need in the Scarborough community. Hundreds turned out on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them on their way into the cold North Sea. Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley is on the beach in Scarborough.
It's the New Year's Day dip in Scarborough, where 150 swimmers have taken to the North Sea here. You may be able to see the crowds that have turned out. Hundreds of people have come to the beach here to encourage people to take the dip, and it's all about charity. It's something that's been arranged by the Scarborough Lions. They take a fee for people to enter that goes towards charity, and then many people here are raising money for charity through doing this New Year's Day dip. It's certainly attracted a lot of crowd. You can see some people here in the crowd in fancy dress. There's been a competition for the best dressed, and we can see people coming out of the water now who have taken part.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, at least 10 people have now been confirmed killed and 30 more injured after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. And the driver then got out of the vehicle and started firing a weapon, and police returned fire, with a local police superintendent saying the gunman was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. And the FBI has since taken over the investigation and say they are now investigating an act of terrorism, with the suspects being declared deceased on the scene. We can now speak with the journalist Daniel Bates. Daniel, welcome to the show and a happy new year to you. So it seemed initially, after this horrific act, the mayor, LaToya Cantrell, declared this an act of terrorism. The FBI then said no, it wasn't. Now the FBI seems to be saying it is an act of terrorism. They are now investigating. We know that the perpetrator was declared deceased at the scene. I'm assuming that was during an exchange of gunfire with the police, 2 of whom were hospitalised but mercifully not killed. All eyes now on a press conference in around about an hour's time. What do you think we might learn from that, Daniel?
Well, hopefully we're going to get a bit more information about the suspect, hopefully their motivation and who they were. One detail that's been noticed by people online is that there was a flag attached to the back of the suspect's truck. It's bound up in grey. There's no details of it, but that might give us more of an indication about who they are and their political leanings and a possible motive. We may also find out some more about some of the victims, for example, the ages. So far, we just have the fact that 10 were killed and 30 were injured in this horrific incident. But we may get some ages and some idea about where they're from as well. But this is a very fluid situation, an absolutely horrific thing to happen as the new year was brought in New Orleans.
And the police superintendent, Anne Kirkpatrick, who delivered a press conference around about 3.5 hours ago, said the majority of people hurt and killed seem to be locals, not tourists. Of course, it's a huge international tourist zone there, the New Orleans, the whiskey bars, hugely densely populated, and a lot of questions will be asked, as we saw in Germany at the terror attack there. How, as we saw in Magdeburg, how was a vehicle able to drive around such an area which was obviously going to be so heavily populated at this very, very busy time of year? How was it able to gather enough steam to do the damage it did?
Absolutely. I think one of the key questions is how on earth did this happen? I mean, the police have said that the suspect went around a barricade, but they haven't said what kind of barricade it was. If it was just a movable barricade, then that's potentially a major security failure. I mean, I've been to New Orleans numerous times. Bourbon Street is perhaps the busiest street in one of the party capitals of America, and this was New Year's Eve. So one would think that there would be some kind of permanent structure there or police cars parked protecting it. The fact that someone was able to get onto that street, in my eyes, raises serious questions about a potential security lapse.
And in terms of the videos that have been posted online, too horrific to show on GB News, but you could hear, Daniel, what appeared to be semi-automatic gunfire. So again, there's talk about how heavily armed this individual was. And again, reports of improvised explosive devices being found in that pickup truck, which again, mercifully, weren't detonated. We don't know if they were able to be detonated even. Again, we may learn more about that at 5 o'clock. But Daniel, as tragic as this was, it could have been far worse if the police hadn't intervened so quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, there were 300 officers on the streets of New Orleans on New Year's Eve, and had they not intervened quicker, I think things could have been far bloodier, that the body count could have been far higher. It seems that 2 brave officers were injured in the shootout, which killed the suspect. But as you say, those improvised explosive devices in the truck, raise really deep and troubling questions about the suspect and their motives, and the body count could indeed have been far higher.
And Daniel, as you said, the flag on that vehicle will be key. We should learn more in around about an hour's time why the individual was motivated to do such a barbaric and seemingly random act of violence. But I understand there's a huge football game in New Orleans later on this evening as well. And again, that'll be very heavily attended, about 75,000 believed to be going towards that. And what the last thing that the police, the FBI, the mayor will want to do is to spook the city at 5 o'clock, because this is another event which could in itself be a target. So perhaps they might hold things back.
No, it seems like the Sugar Bowl, which is a big college football game, is going ahead. I suppose there's one or two ways you could look at these things. With terrorist attacks, you either carry on as normal, which becomes an act of defiance to show that you're not going to be cowed by these kind of intimidation tactics, or you pause. And it seems like I think they've chosen to go ahead with the Sugar Bowl. But you're right, the security presence is going to be very, very, very tight tonight. Everyone's going to be on edge. But I think they're making the right call by going ahead because, with terrorists, when you stop doing things that you're going to do, when you don't live your life as normal, that's when they win. And I think they're making the right call. But security is going to be really, really tight tonight.
OK, Daniel Bates, thank you for joining us live from New York. And as I said, we're expecting that press conference now in around about 3/4 of an hour's time. We should learn, hopefully, a lot more about the motivation perhaps behind this and perhaps even the identity of this individual, as information will be coming out within the next hour or so. And of course, we'll bring you all of that live here on GB News. In the meantime, thanks there to the journalist Daniel Bates. And moving back to Britain, and the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has released a defiant message for the new year. Let's take a brief listen.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
Watch this space, leaving us hanging there. And I'm joined by the studio by the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Welcome back to the studio, guys. Interesting looking at the metrics around this. 24 seconds. As I said earlier, I've had longer burps. It was so short. And actually, in terms of the numbers of views, Kemi Badenoch is getting something of a battering. Only 180,000 people have bothered to have a look at that. Sir Keir Starmer's 916,000, Nigel Farage 1.1 million. So in terms of getting the battle for the eyeballs, Kemi Badenoch is losing. Here's somebody who last week said Nigel Farage doesn't understand social media. I digress. It was short, it was sharp. Was there anything in there to get you excited?
Absolutely not, Martin. Where we had Keir Starmer's flaccid message with Kemi Badenoch, it was Meghan Markle-style word salad. Is that all the ideas the Conservatives have to present? 24 seconds, and she told us literally nothing. You said it was defiance. I don't even know what that was. And the fact she couldn't even bother to learn it off by heart, she had to use an auto cue. I mean, I know she said she doesn't have time for lunch, but surely she could have spared a couple of minutes to try and inject some passion into that and try and speak with some authenticity and actually say something that makes sense and means something to the electorate. Yet again, it just shows that the Tories have lost touch with voters of this country and they don't seem to have any idea for who or what they stand for. And Kemi, as leader, I mean, she doesn't have it. She's never had it as easy right now against this current Labour government, yet the opposition is just failing. I wanted to hear something so strong from her. I wanted to hear like a Margaret Thatcher-style rousing speech. And instead, as I say, we just got this word salad, just empty, meaningless platitudes, which tell me nothing about what this current Conservative opposition party stand for.
Kane Blackwell, there we hear Sarah Louise called it a word salad. Was there anything in there for you to get your teeth stuck into?
Well, look, I mean, it was short and sweet, let's just say that. But I do think Kemi is sort of trying to show us that there is more. And actually, over this past week, maybe not having this big sort of, rambling speech that, she could, trip up again on or whatever, maybe is the best. She's trying to focus and get her head down.
But where's her ideas, Kane?
But this is the point. She has an opportunity over this next year to actually set out what the Conservative Party stands for in this country.
So she doesn't know yet?
No, but it's not that she doesn't know. She has a view on what she thinks it is, but what she needs to do is actually work with the whole party. The problem for so long is that the Conservative Party as a whole, and I'm talking from membership to the top tier of the party, have not had that golden thread running throughout.
They're divided still.
Well, it's actually about bringing people in and actually having, a whole discussion as a party about who we want to be and what we want to do for this country.
I wonder, though, if that's a missed opportunity, because say what you like about Sir Keir Starmer's speech, he did set out his plan.
Yeah.
He said we've got a plan for change. He talks about 1.5 million new homes, restoring the dream of home ownership, children starting school ready to learn with a free school lunch, immigration reduced, at least he's saying that for the first time, waiting lists cut dramatically. Now, we can challenge those points, but there was a vision put foot forward. Same with Nigel Farage. He talks about teaching British culture. We do that in the 5 o'clock hour, making British culture something to be proud of, rowing back on net zero, taking back control properly of our borders. But with Kemi Bailey, it was watch this space. But can people be bothered to wait to watch this space?
No, exactly. We want to know now, what do they stand for? What are their ideas? What are they going to do to tackle the most pressing issues facing this country? We have a disastrous government in power who is taking us further and further into the abyss. This is when we should be hearing from Kemi, when she should be coming forward with positive, brilliant ideas that are going to get voters to believe in the Conservatives again and believe that they mean what they say and that they are going to do something to affect change. But we heard nothing from it. As I say, it was just an empty word salad, the kind of thing that Meghan Markle would spout off.
I wonder, though, Kane Blackwell, if Kemi needs to say a lot at the moment. I mean, the big poll that came out at the weekend from More in Common shows the Tories putting on 100 seats without having to do anything. So is it back to that old Napoleon Bonaparte thing, don't interrupt your enemy when they're making mistakes?
Well, it is true, but the Conservative Party cannot rest on its laurels anymore. It cannot think that just because the government are doing badly, that the country is going to turn around and say, we love you all again. Because at the moment, people do not feel that way. And we've actually got to work with the people, actually go out there, listen to them, and understand why we failed. I've been list a number of reasons, but it's not my job to actually look at the party right now. That's down to Kemi and her team, and they really do need to look at, I think, democratising the party, and actually that's going to make a difference between us and Reform, because the Reform Party, it is a sort of one-man band with Nigel, and
is that fair?
Well, I mean, he is the figurehead of that party, and, that party sort of lives and dies on Nigel at this moment in time. That could change in the next year or so. But, I think what the Conservative Party needs to do is actually show that they are...
They need to show some contrition as well.
All right, guys.
For their mistakes and failures.
We have to leave it there. And at 5 o'clock, as I say, we will fully analyse that speech by Nigel Farage. You guys are back later in the hour to talk about the epidemic of shoplifting. Superb stuff. Thank you. And I'll see you in a bit, Sarah Louise and Kane. Thank you. Now, if you didn't get everything that you wanted on your Christmas this year, fret ye not. Because how about 50 grand in tax-free cash in the new year? Really could be your biggest prize yet, courtesy of us here at GB News. Here's the details that you need to try and win it.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. Amazing, just the best feeling ever. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, coming up, we'll be getting all the latest in that horrific attack in which at least 10 people have now been confirmed dead and 35 more injured after a vehicle was driven into a crowd of people in central New Orleans, with incoming President Donald Trump labelling the attack as an act of pure evil. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think?
Morning. I think we have failed young drivers as a society, and we need to train them better and train them earlier. I think that the idea of stopping them carrying passengers for 6 months is a good idea, because you've got peer pressure within a car. So yes, but I think graduated licenses are really difficult. You've got what we call the 3 E's, which is education, educating kids to drive earlier, engineering, which is making roads better and safer, and then comes enforcement at the end of it. So I think we're failing in these two first ones, the education and the enforcement. I put my kids, all three of them, through a thing called Young Driver, which allows under 17s to drive on private land with ADI instructors and learn the craft of driving and all the below the dashboard stuff and hazard awareness long before they try and do this very compressed period of time to learn about driving. I think we're failing them. So I want to see it in schools, and I want to see them being taught much, much earlier.
Nobody's actually pointing the finger of blame, I think, at the young driver, but maybe young drivers don't understand how different it is. You feel you can drive, you've passed your test, and then a load of your friends get in the back, and suddenly the mood is different, the pressure on you as a driver is very different, showing off, just larking around and having a great time. Aisha, how do you feel about the fact that clearly young drivers do need to be protected almost from themselves, don't they?
Well, I do agree with some of what Quentin has just said, especially about starting early and especially about getting young people used to the dangers of being on the road.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:25 on New Year's Day with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, at least 10 people have been confirmed killed and 35 more injured after a vehicle was driven into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. The FBI has since taken over the investigation and say they're now investigating what they call an act of terrorism. And the New Orleans Police Department have confirmed that the suspect was declared deceased on the scene. I'm now joined in the studio by the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, welcome back to the studio. We're expecting a full police press conference in around about half an hour's time. Of course, we'll have that live on GB News. Has anything new emerged since we last spoke?
Yeah, just in the last half an hour, maybe 30 minutes. It turns out that the truck has probably, again, according to Fox News anyway, crossed the border 2 days ago in the last 48 hours. Also, the plates are Texas plates. License plates are pretty easy to steal and pretty easy to manipulate. Yeah. But it looks like, now that's, according to reports, they've also, I just talked to a friend in New Orleans who said that they've closed off a couple of streets. So there is some suspicion that they found out where the terrorist was living or maybe just visiting or renting. Right. But they have closed off a couple of streets. Nobody, and they're not streets of note. It's not the French Quarter. So, there's a lot of breaking news. I think we'll learn a lot more at the 11 a.m. press conference, which is 5 p.m. here.
And we can see live pictures on our screens there. That's of the area. This is the aftermath, of course, of that attack in the quarter there. Tell us a bit about New Orleans, the demographics, what the city is like. And, of course, this is a hugely significant tourist attraction spot on New Year's Eve. And more to the point, how on earth could a vehicle get up to speed in an area like this, which would have been, of course, a target? It was
densely populated at the time. There's probably more tourists in New Orleans right now than there are residents. It's only a city of 350,000. The general area might have 1 million total, the metropolitan area, but the city's only has 350. So, it's a surge of tourists, especially on weekends like New Year's Eve, New Year's weekend, and then you have the football game tonight, where there'll be 74,000 people. I hope they're very transparent at the press conference so people can make their own decisions on whether to attend the game tonight. But this is a city that's, during these weekends, it's dense. It's very dense in the French Quarter on Bourbon Street. Obviously, from the picture, you can see that street has been cleared out, so there won't be any, social activity tonight. But again, 74,000 people plus at the game. I'm hearing 500. I just talked to a friend in New Orleans. He said there's 500,000 people in the city just visiting. So this is a very tense situation.
And what the police won't want to do, of course, at 5 o'clock this afternoon is spook the city.
Right.
But it's their job. It's to inform so people can make their own decisions.
I think that's right. And people have a right to know if this is a terrorist plot, if it's a lone wolf, if there's any risk by going to the game tonight or going out in New Orleans, downtown New Orleans. So, hopefully they'll be very transparent about it. And we've, again, we've learned a lot in the last hour.
We've just got some live pictures on your screen now. That is President Joe Biden, the US president. He's boarding Air Force One in Delaware amid the horrific attacks in New Orleans, which is now, as we just said, confirmed. 10 people were killed and 35 more injured. And 2 police officers were injured in what we understand was an exchange of gunfire. The suspect was declared dead at the scene, and the FBI have confirmed that they are now investigating an act of terrorism. So, Greg Swenson, in these circumstances, it'll be routine for the president to be sent back to the White House to deal with what is obviously now a national emergency.
Yeah, not typically that would be the case, and it is a holiday weekend. For all the kind of kidding around about Joe Biden's holiday schedule, he has spent more time away from the White House than any other president on holiday. He was at his beach house or his holiday house in Delaware, and he's going to Camp David. I'm not sure why he chose Camp David and not the White House itself. Camp David is the presidential retreat in Maryland. So, I'm confused why they didn't wake him up during the night. I mean, his hours are pretty undisciplined, to say the least. He doesn't wake up till 9 or 10 o'clock.
Well, we saw Greg Swenson there, a small victory. Joe Biden made it up the stairs without falling over. And he gets on there to Air Force One to go back and attend. Of course, now only 20 days, including today, left of his presidency before Donald Trump is sworn in that's January the 20th, right?
That's right, Monday the 20th.
That's it. So this is a developing story, and as we said, there's a full press conference expected at 5 p.m. Of course, we'll carry that live here on GBNews. Greg Swenson, thank you for your company, as ever. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. There's loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including all the latest reaction to that deadly attack in New Orleans, which, as we just said, has left 10 people dead and more than 35 people injured, including 2 police officers who mercifully were not shot dead. The perpetrator, however, has been reported deceased at the scene. Full press conference at 5 o'clock. Before that, here's your latest news headlines, and here's Sophia Wenzel.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 4:31. Now, as you've been hearing, at least 10 people have been killed after a truck ploughed through a crowd celebrating New Year in New Orleans. The FBI are investigating this morning's deadly attack as an act of terrorism. At least 35 people have been injured after the man drove a pickup truck into a large crowd on the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. Local police said the driver of the vehicle got out and opened fire on police, with 2 officers shot but in a stable condition, while the suspect was declared dead at the scene. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time, and people are being asked to stay away from the area. President Joe Biden has released a statement following this morning's deadly attack. The US president says he has been continually briefed on the incident throughout the day and that he is grateful for the brave and swift response of local law enforcement in preventing even greater death and injury. Meanwhile, Donald Trump says his administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as it investigates and recovers from this morning's attack. Posting on his Truth Social, the president-elect said, "Our hearts are with all the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department." In other news now, domestic energy prices have risen with more pain for bill payers set to come. The second increase in Ofgem's price cap this winter takes effect today and means someone paying by direct debit and using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £1,738 a year. That is a £21 a year more increase than under the previous cap. So bill payers are being urged to submit a meter reading to avoid overpaying on estimated usage. Bills are about 50% higher than pre-COVID levels, and analysts predict they will rise by a further 3% in April. Data has now been extracted from the black box from the doomed Jeju air disaster that killed 179 people. The data from the cockpit voice recorder will now be converted into an audio file, while a second black box will be sent to the US for analysis. Investigators hope the information they find will provide insights about the crucial moments leading up to the tragedy. All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew were killed on Sunday when the passenger jet crash-landed at Muan International Airport and slammed into a concrete embankment at the end of the runway, where it burst into flames. And to Scarborough now, where brave people have been ringing in New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers, helping raise thousands of pounds to help those most in need in the Scarborough community. Hundreds turned out on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them on their way into the cold North Sea. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, things will turn much colder across the UK. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, but some snow and ice in places as well. Low pressure is moving away to the south and east of the UK now, taking wind and rain with it, allowing a northerly airstream to become established across the UK, and this will introduce some wintry hazards as we go through the coming few days. Wet and windy weather then clearing away to the southeast as we go through the evening. Some wintry showers across the central slice of the UK, also easing as we go through the overnight period. So showers becoming mainly confined to areas exposed to the north to northwesterly airstream. And again, those showers will be wintry in places, especially across the hills towards the north, but to some lower levels in places as well. A widespread frost forming, temperatures in towns and cities below freezing, down to -7 or -8 in a few parts of Scotland, and there'll be some ice around to start the day on Thursday as well. So starting Thursday then, further wintry showers moving in from the north into the northern parts of Scotland, a mixture of hail, sleet and some snow in places. Southern parts of Scotland mostly fine to start the day, some clear weather but very chilly here, some frost and some ice in places. A few wintry showers into Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland seeing the best of the quieter weather to start the day here. A few showers also across the Irish Sea areas, down across North Sea coastal areas of eastern England, but elsewhere lots of sunshine around, and that's the way of things as we go through Thursday. There will be plenty of sunshine, certainly across inland areas, but it will be a cold day wherever you are with a north to northwesterly wind blowing, and further showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream, particularly into northern Scotland, down across parts of Northern Ireland, the west of England, and down some North Sea coasts at times too. Temperatures are at the very best up to 6 or 7 degrees, but add on the effect of that north to northwesterly wind and feeling close to, if not below freezing in 1 or 2 places. As we go into the evening, the showers will tend to become more and more confined to those coasts, so a frost and some ice forming again as we go into the overnight period. Again, a very cold night developing, and we hold on to a mixture of sunshine and wintry showers on Friday, with a risk of some more persistent rain and some snow moving in from the southwest as we go into the weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:38 on New Year's Day with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Hope you had a fantastic celebration. Let's move on, because what are your New Year's resolutions? Are you quitting the booze? Are you losing some flab? Or what about stubbing out the ciggies? Well, if you've got some tips on how to give up smoking, then here is your lucky chance, because we can now speak with the clinical lead at the National Centre for Smoking Cessation and Training. It's Louise Ross. Louise, welcome to the show. A lot of people will be looking at themselves in the mirror today thinking, yeah, I'm a little bit overweight and I really should give up the fags. Everybody who smokes must know that smoking is bad for them, but of course, it's addictive. You've helped thousands and thousands of people to quit the cigs. How do you do it?
Well, there's lots of things that people need to think about, and we've already seen in the Stop Smoking Service a big surge of people who think this is the year that I'm going to do it. And yeah, I'll give people a few tips. It's a lot easier if you do it with some help. A lot of people think that they have to tough it out and do it on their own. But believe me, if you get help from a Stop Smoking Service or download an app to help you, there's so much help there that can guide you along and get you through the most difficult parts. And the other thing is that sometimes people think they have to do it without any stop smoking aids. Now, we really strongly advocate that people switch to vaping or use nicotine replacement therapy or get some prescription medication. It makes the stopping smoking so much easier. It's more likely to be effective if you get some help and use a stop smoking aid as well. And a lot of people will say, they don't want to be addicted to something else, but actually, it's the same. If you use a vape, it's the same nicotine that you find in nicotine replacement therapy or a cigarette, but there's no smoke in it. So it's the smoke that kills, not the nicotine. And that's something really crucial that I want people to hear the message about. I've helped many people switch to vaping, and they say that the health benefits that they've experienced have been tremendous and very quick as well. They, less shortness of breath when they climb the stairs. They look better, they feel better. So I just strongly encourage people to give it a go and make this the year that they do it for good.
And see, the thing is, Louise, I'll have a confession to make. I enjoy a crafty fag, but I enjoy it at key trigger points, and that is after a shift, when I think it's a reward, and particularly when I have a pint. They seem to go hand in glove. What about, I can't avoid those situations. I always finish a shift and I tend to like to go to the pub. What about smokeless tobacco? There's those little machines you get now you put like what looks like a fag in, so it burns the tobacco, but without burning it. Are they any use?
Do you mean the heated tobacco products? Yes. They are not as safe as vapes, but they're much safer than smoking because, again, you don't burn the tobacco. And some people like them, but a lot of the people that we see in the Stop Smoking Services want to stop because of the expense of smoking. And the heated tobacco products really aren't that cheap in comparison with vaping. They're probably more in line with the cost of smoking. So for a lot of people, they won't hold appeal like a vape would. People who vape probably spend about a third on their vape as they would have done on the cigarettes. But you're absolutely right. There are many things that people who smoke will do that are associated with other activities. So it might be about sitting talking to a certain friend, or when they're working on the computer, for instance, going to the pub, as you say, finishing work. And what we recommend in the Stop Smoking Services is that you change your routine so that you perhaps drink a different drink in the pub so that you don't associate the taste of the drink that you're having with the cigarette that you would have smoked at the same time. All those changes in routine will help.
Is it also, can we scare people? Look, I know we can price people out of it. It was 17 quid the other day for a packet of fags. 17 quid. I couldn't believe my eyeballs. What about the scare tactics? We saw this week there's a report that every ciggy now, apparently, we're being told, takes 20 minutes off your life. And if a 10-a-day smoker quits today, then by the 8th of January, they'll have a full day of life back. Does that work? Or is it basically people know that smoking is bad for them and it's a risk that they're prepared to take?
I think you're right. People will sometimes say, well, you know, a few years off the end of life, you know, what difference will it actually make? But the thing to remember about those statistics, and it was a really interesting study, is that what it does is take years off the healthiest part of your life. You know, it doesn't, what it means is that the years of good health are much shorter. And as you get older, you want to be able to move, to exercise, to play with your grandchildren, to run upstairs, that sort of thing. You don't want to accelerate the arrival of the years where you just have to sit in your chair gasping for breath, or spend years going backwards and forwards to hospital because you've had a cancer diagnosis or heart disease. It shortens the healthy part of your life, and that's perhaps the message that wasn't clear enough from the study, which, as I say, was a very good study. But, you know, it's not just about lopping off a few years right at the end of your life.
All right. We have to leave it there. Inspiring stuff. Thank you very, very much for helping us to think again before we reach for the ciggies. That's the clinical lead at the National Centre for Smoking Cessation and Training, Louise Ross. And have a very, very happy, peaceful and prosperous New Year. Thank you. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, and who can blame you, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest GB News winter sun forecast. And for some places, Madeira for example, it is going to be relatively warm to end the week. Lots of dry weather around some parts of southern Europe, but a different story across parts of Italy, Croatia into Greece. A little bit of rain pushing its way through here. Mostly dry across central and southern parts of Spain, a little bit wetter further north. And like I said, for Madeira, temperatures on the rise, getting into the low 20s by the end of the week. Elsewhere, temperatures nearer normal for the time of year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Coming up, robberies targeting businesses' properties has soared to a record high of 12,000 last year, with critics blaming the Tory changes policy on shoplifting. More on this next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As Strictly Come Dancing approaches its iconic Blackpool episode, marking halfway through the competition, visually impaired dancers across the country have spoken out about how groundbreaking the casting of Chris McCausland is, who suffers from, if I hope I'm saying this correctly, retinitis pigmentosa, and they have found him particularly inspiring. We've been talking, Sean, about how the casting of Strictly has been inspiring to so many people. But I imagine there'll be lots of people who are watching this at home finding your story of resilience really inspiring, because you've obviously really been through it. Is dancing something that has sort of, you know, helped keep you going through all of those troubles? And what does it mean to you to see casting like this on a show like Strictly Come Dancing?
Like I say, all the things I went through. So those 9 years when I wasn't dancing, you know, I was still dancing in my head and just banging on to other people. Very much not just people with sight loss. You know, I've been a big advocate for people with social isolation. So many people on their own now, social anxiety, especially since COVID. And I just want people to get out. The stuff that I'm doing and all the stuff Chris is obviously doing, it will inspire others. Again, like I say, just Just not people just recycling. Because I had so many people come up to me in the early days, guys, and now that say, you know what, Shawnee, I've seen you do it, so I'm just going to do it. But you just got to get over yourself, because if you bother to do the maths, because all it is maths and walking.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Maths and walking actually sounds quite difficult.
Sean, thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. Can you shout? Can you walk? Crack on.
Sean, you're an inspiration. Thank you, mate, for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. You're a star, and so glad.
Just before I go, I'm just going to say this is Kev. Here's Kev.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, on New Year's Day here on GB News. Now, robberies targeting businesses reached a record high last year with 33 incidents every day. The Office for National Statistics data has shown that robbery of business property rose by 52%. 52% in the year to June 2024, rising from 7,884 to 12,000, and that's the highest level ever recorded. And critics have warned that the shoplifters' charter has fueled this rise. And I'm joined now in the studio by the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Welcome back to the studio, guys. Let's start with you, Sarah Louise, this time. Quite simply, criminals know nothing's going to happen. They know if they nick a leg of lamb or a bottle of whatever, that the police won't turn up. And about 7 out of 10 instances, the coppers can't be bothered. And the clear-up rate is absolutely pitiful. When you look at the numbers, barely 1 in 10 robberies ends in a charge, and only half of them get investigated. The police have given up, and that's why we've got a shoplifting epidemic.
Absolutely, Martin. I am the daughter of a high-end jeweller, so growing up, I've lived under the threat of someone committing armed robbery against the family business. It was drummed into me to obviously watch out for shoplifters, how they work, everything else. But never has it been as rife as what it is now. They work in criminal gangs, these people. And because there is no deterrent for them, as you say, anything that's under the limit of £200 is seen for a free-for-all. The security guards don't do anything. The police don't do anything. Myself, I've been told by police officers within London Met that they will not respond to burglary or robbery unless you are physically harmed. So they won't even come out to something like that unless you have physical harm perpetrated against you. How frightening that we are now living in that, with that fear of that. But also for shop workers, I've done investigations into this on Oxford Street. I did an investigation last year of what shop workers have to face and have to live with. They're on the minimum wage, yet they've got people, for example, a man with a machete walked into JD Sport with a machete in broad daylight.
Grotesque.
How do you work with the threat of that?
Yeah.
That any time someone could do something against you, and
it's crazy.
What's going to be the deterrent?
Kane Blackwell, let me bring you in, because another stat that leapt out of this, just astonishing. 20%, this is by USDOR, the Shop Workers Union, 20% of all retail staff have had a violent attack last year. In 1 year alone, 20%, and that's up from just 8%. So we've seen almost a trebling of violence against shoplifters in 2 years. Something's wrong.
Yeah, there is. And I think
what the problem is perception about what the police are doing.
Nothing.
And well, I mean, look, our police do a really important job and, you know, they work really, really hard. Do I think they get things right all the time? No, I don't,
No.
but who does? But what I think really is the problem is we keep seeing these things on social media day in, day out. You know, people going into shops, raiding them, whatever it is. And we keep seeing it and nothing ever seems to change. There never seems to be a deterrent. And what actually needs to happen is those sort of what we would call petty crimes. I don't think they're petty.
No.
These are really, really important, damaging crimes to businesses and our economy at the end of the day. You know, this all links back to the economy and we really need to make sure that our businesses are safe and secure and consumers feel safe to go out and shop.
All right, Sarah Louise, we've got a quick 30 seconds. What do we do about this rot?
Well, we get tougher with crime, with sentencing. We start bringing back proper sentences for crimes like this. We start increasing the amount of police, but police that are actually effective and do something about it. But it all comes down to our courts, it comes down to our government bringing in tougher policies and bigger deterrents so people don't think of this as a career, because that's what it is for a lot of people now.
Okay.
Burglary, shoplifting is a career. They're making money out of it.
And
also the shop...
We have to leave it there. We've
customers.
run out of time.
Sorry.
Sarah Louise Robson, thank you very much. And Kane Blackwell, always a pleasure. Now, stick with us because coming up, we've got a live police conference from New Orleans. We're expected to find out more details on that horrific attack, which now is being treated as a terrorist attack. That's next. Stick with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now it's your weather with Martin.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, things will turn much colder across the UK. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, but some snow and ice in places as well. Low pressure's moving away to the south and east of the UK now, taking wind and rain with it, allowing a northerly airstream to become established across the UK, and this will introduce some wintry hazards as we go through the coming few days. Wet and windy weather then clearing away to the southeast as we go through the evening. Some wintry showers across the central slice of the UK, also easing as we go through the overnight period. So showers becoming mainly confined to areas exposed to the north to northwesterly airstream. And again, those showers will be wintry in places, especially across the hills towards the north, but to some lower levels in places as well. A widespread frost forming, temperatures in towns and cities below freezing, down to -7 or -8 in a few parts of Scotland. And there'll be some ice around to start the day on Thursday as well. So starting Thursday then, further wintry showers moving in from the north into the northern parts of Scotland, a mixture of hail, sleet and some snow in places. Southern parts of Scotland mostly fine to start the day, some clear weather but very chilly here, some frost and some ice in places. A few wintry showers into Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland seeing the best of the quieter weather to start the day here. A few showers also across the Irish Sea areas, down across North Sea coastal areas of eastern England, but elsewhere lots of sunshine around, and that's the way of things as we go through Thursday. There will be plenty of sunshine, certainly across inland areas, but it will be a cold day wherever you are with a north to northwesterly wind blowing, and further showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream, particularly into northern Scotland, down across parts of Northern Ireland, the west of England, and down some North Sea coasts at times too. Temperatures are at the very best up to 6 or 7 degrees, but add on the effect of that north to northwesterly wind and feeling close to, if not below freezing in one or two places. As we go into the evening, the showers will tend to become more and more confined to those coasts, so a frost and some ice forming again as we go into the overnight period. Again, a very cold night developing, and we hold on to a mixture of sunshine and wintry showers on Friday with a risk of some more persistent rain and some snow moving in from the southwest as we go into the weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny the Times did this story because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I open the Times and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think, well, that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode of one James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink. Let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else, or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal, and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone, and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you and a very happy new year on the first day of 2025. Thanks for joining me. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're bringing you all of the very latest until 6 p.m. On today's show, 10 people have now been confirmed killed and 35 more injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. The suspect has been confirmed as dead, eliminated at the scene, and the FBI are now investigating this as an act of terrorism. We'll bring you all the latest. We've got a news conference due to start in around about 5 minutes' time. And meanwhile, back in Blighty, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage believes that his party, Reform UK, is gathering momentum as he issues this New Year's message.
That with just a handful of MPs, we've made a real impact over the course of these last 6 months.
Nigel Farage is remaining very upbeat about the future prospects of his party, but can he go even higher in the polls in 2025, or will Reform run out of steam? And it's that dreaded day of the year when we all notice the flab, the wheezing and the wrinkles. Well, to help you, and to be honest, to help me, get fitter in 2025, we got a gang of experts to help you shed the pounds, stub out the ciggies and transform you from a couch potato into a hot potato. That's all coming up in your next hour. I'm just hearing who wrote that hot potato line. Who writes this rubbish? I'm afraid it was me. Hey, it's January the 1st. Give me a break. Things can only get better, trust me. Now stick with us because we'll be crossing shortly to New Orleans. We're expecting a hugely anticipated press conference. Perhaps some more details will emerge of the modus operandi, the motivation and even the identification of what's now being treated as a terror attack in the city. That's coming next. Get in touch, send your views. gbnews.com/your say. But before we continue, it's your headlines, and here's Sophia Wesler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock. These are your headlines. At least 10 people have been killed after a truck ploughed through a crowd celebrating the New Year in New Orleans. The FBI are now investigating this morning's deadly attack as an act of terrorism. At least 35 people were injured when the man drove a pickup truck into a large crowd on the corner of the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. Local police said the driver of the vehicle got out and opened fire on police, with 2 officers shot but in a stable condition, while the suspect was declared dead at the scene. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time, and people are being asked to avoid the area. President Joe Biden has released a statement following this morning's deadly attack. The US president spoke a short while ago while leaving from Delaware Airport, refusing to give much away.
More to say in the next hour or so following what's going on in New Orleans. I'm not going to comment till I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says his administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as it investigates and recovers from this morning's attack. Posting on Truth Social, the president-elect said, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in the country, it turned out to be true." Police have not indicated the nationality or identity of the attacker. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has hailed 2024 as a year of change as he shared his first New Year's message as Prime Minister. Sir Keir declared that the UK will embark on a year of rebuilding and rediscovering the great nation that we are in 2025.
Until you can look forward and believe in the promise and the prosperity of Britain again, then this government will fight for you.
But the Conservatives have accused Labour of offering change for the worse, as Kemi Badenoch used her own New Year's message to warn that efforts to turn around Tory fortunes would be bumpy.
Happy New Year. Like all of you, I am looking forward to a 2025 that is full of hope, security and prosperity. The Conservative Party is also going through a period of change. This process of renewal will be a long-term project. Things may be bumpy along the way, but the party I now lead is going to do things differently. Watch this space.
Domestic energy prices have risen, with more pain for bill payers set to come. The second increase in Ofgem's price cap this winter takes effect today, and it means someone paying by direct debit and using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £1,738 a year. That is £20 a year more than under the previous cap, so bill payers are being urged to submit a meter reading to avoid overpaying on estimated usage. Bills are about 50% higher than pre-COVID levels, and analysts predict they will rise by a further 3% in April. Data has now been extracted from the black box from the doomed Jeju airplane disaster that killed 179 people. The data from the cockpit voice recorder will now be converted into an audio file, while a second black box will be sent to the US for analysis. Investigators hope the information they find will provide insights about the crucial moments leading up to the tragedy. All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew were killed on Sunday when the passenger jet crash-landed at Muan International Airport and slammed into a concrete wall at the end of the runway. To Scarborough now, where brave people are ringing in the New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers, helping raise thousands of pounds to help those most in need in the Scarborough community. Hundreds turned out on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them away into the North Cold Sea. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
Thank you, Sophia. Now to our top story today. At least 10 people have now been confirmed killed and 30 more injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. The driver then reportedly got out of the vehicle and started firing a weapon, and police returned fire, with a local police superintendent saying that the gunman was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. and the FBI have since taken over this investigation and say they are now investigating this as an act of terrorism, with the suspect being declared deceased on the scene. Well, for all the latest details, I'm now joined in the studio by the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, welcome back to the studio. So a lot of fresh information is coming out. We're expecting a press conference later on this afternoon about the details that are emerging. We hope to learn of the modus operandi. We hope to learn of the motivation, perhaps even the identity of that. That press conference hasn't happened yet, but has anything else come to light since we last spoke around about an hour ago?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is just, I mean, we're all curious about this press conference being postponed 2 hours. It probably means there's breaking news, whatever. But I have heard a couple of things from my people on the ground in New Orleans. One is, this is definitely, they suspect it's not, this person was not acting alone. They found IEDs around the neighborhood in the French Quarter near Bourbon Street. They exploded one of the IEDs. He heard a friend say, one of the guys say, fire in the hole before they exploded it. So that was just one. There might have been more.
Because there were explosive devices we hear in the back of this vehicle, which mercifully didn't go off.
Right.
But you're
there
saying
were other ones planted in the area, and they've searched, I'm sure they've searched every rubbish can and every corner in the neighborhood. They exploded at least one that I know of. And then you had the fact that there was a rental unit fire last night, and they suspect that that's linked to the attack. It could have been, what happens some of these times, some of these guys, they rent a place, an Airbnb for a night or two so they can get organized and plant the seeds. So that's, again, all reported either in local New Orleans media or just rumor mill from my friend on the ground there. But so unconfirmed, but definitely suspicious of things beyond the actual incident, IEDs in the neighborhood, as well as this fire at a rental unit.
It would be an astonishing thing if it does transpire that there was a wider implication. That may actually, Greg Swenson, feed into what the police superintendent Anne Kirkpatrick said earlier on at the morning press conference, and that was they closed off 8 blocks in every direction from the scene. We thought at that point to try and investigate the inward momentum, how it happened. But if there's a broader threat, that would be an incredible development.
Because there was just, if they found IED equipment or materials in the truck, well, of course, that means he or someone else could have planted them in the neighborhood. Again, I'm thinking about the Boston Marathon bombing. But also, the truck that was used in the attack came through the border, allegedly, according to Fox, came through the border in the last 48 hours. And then you have the fact that the assailant also had another vehicle. Now, on local media in New Orleans, they've posted the license plate. It's a Texas license plate of that vehicle. So it might mean he's got accomplices. It might mean he ditched the car somewhere. We don't know yet.
And we've got live pictures on the screen there. That's of the immediate area where this impact took place. This is now being locked down. As we said, 8 blocks in every direction was what we heard earlier on from the police superintendent. The whole area now being treated as an active crime scene. We are expecting this police news conference to come. I think it's been put back a little bit. And Greg Swenson, that in itself could have some significance. As you said, if it's perhaps the wrong kind of news, they might be delaying it. And as you said, there's a huge sporting event in New Orleans tonight, and there'll be 75,000 people attending that. The last thing they want to do is spook that crowd.
Right. On one hand, you don't want to spook the crowd, but on the other hand, if you should let those people make their own decisions, and it would be absolutely tragic if they knew something, if they knew this was a terrorist organization, for example, that would make a lot of people stay home, and perhaps that's the right decision. So we don't know, and hopefully we'll learn that in the press conference at 7.
Okay, lots of fresh details there. Thank you very much, Greg Spence. Just to report, that's what they're reporting locally on New Orleans, not confirmed yet, but still fascinating stuff. Greg Swenson, thank you very much for that update. Excellent stuff. Thank you. Now, moving back to domestic politics here in Great Britain, and Nigel Farage has declared that Reform is a party of optimism in a New Year's message delivered from Winston Churchill's birthplace, Blenheim Palace. And let's take a listen.
I got back involved with politics, took the leadership of Reform UK, and I made one big promise. I said in that general election, albeit with 4 weeks to go, we'd get millions of votes and we'd establish a bridgehead in Parliament. Well, that is what we have done. And I think everybody acknowledges that with just a handful of MPs, we've made a real impact over the course of these last 6 months. And everything we do is based on values. And those values are around the things that matter to us: family, community and country. They're the things that got me back in politics.
Well, there we go. That was Nigel Farage's New Year's message. And of course, it's alongside those from Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. So how did Mr Farage do? Well, let's speak now with the former Labour advisor, Kevin Marr. Kevin, a very, very happy New Year to you. Always an absolute delight to have you on the show. I wish you peace and prosperity in 2025. Now then, let's talk about Nigel Farage's message. Now, certainly in terms of the court of public opinion, he's winning the battle of the eyeballs. He's now had 1.1 million views. Sir Keir Starmer's 916,000. And don't forget Kemi Badenoch, who says Nigel Farage doesn't understand social media, on a mere 180,000 views in last place. On to Mr Farage's speech. Do you think that the Reform Party can, with some validity, claim now to be the party of opposition, or is Mr Farage, I don't know, prone to a bit of New Year's exaggeration?
Well, I think he's made incredible headway. 6 months ago, 7 months ago, probably just to be accurate. Reform were a presence. They were polling quite well. They had been before Nigel Farage took the helm again, because of course I suppose Reform is an iteration of the Brexit Party and UKIP before that as well. But before he was leader under Richard Tice, Reform were doing pretty well anyway. There would have been, I think, a big nuisance in that general election, certainly to the Conservative Party. But under Nigel Farage, they put turbo boosters on Reform. He's a compelling political figure. Whether people like Nigel Farage or they don't, he's a compelling political figure. He's a great speaker. He's a great media performer. He's very clear and he's very consistent in what he says, which is the bane of modern politics, with politicians using language that people don't really understand and always seeming to sort of shift their positions. And Farage doesn't do that. He's consistent and people respond to that. I think he's right. They made incredible headway. They've managed to survive in a system, our first past the post system, which is designed almost to freeze out new entrants, which is why we've had the blue team, the red team and the yellow team basically for 100 years in one form or another. He's trying to break that mould and he's gone some way towards doing it. 5 MPs out of 650 isn't a lot, but it's a bridgehead, as he pointed out. And I can tell you from talking to people I know in both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, he haunts their dreams. Nigel Farage haunts their dreams. The Conservative Party is terrified that he will just punch a hole in their hull and they'll sink as a result of that they can't win the next general election while Reform UK under Nigel Farage is still there. And Labour people similarly look at that and sort of say, well, look, that's a big crisis for the Conservative Party and for Kemi Badenoch, but we can't rest on our laurels either. Farage does incredibly well, particularly in places in northern England where Reform managed to come second in a huge number of parliamentary seats. And if they went a little bit better, they could get to 3 figures at the next general election, I think, very plausibly. So he haunts the dreams of everybody in British politics at the moment. And the question is whether Reform represent what political scientists call a paradigm shift, whether he's actually going to change things permanently or whether this is a bit of a blip and he might kind of die off a little bit during the year. Now, I wouldn't rule out that this is a paradigm shift, that something fundamental is changing in British politics. I think we've seen that over the last decade or more anyway. We've seen, a third of Labour voters, voted for Brexit, although the Labour Party very much opposed to Brexit. We've seen a lot of those same voters vote for Boris Johnson in 2019. We've seen all those people come back again for Labour in 2024. So there's an awful lot of volatility in our political system that didn't used to be there. And Nigel Farage is somebody that understands that. And I think he can control some of these trends. And if he does effectively, doesn't make any mistakes, sorts their act out with Reform, which it looks like he's doing, gets money, he's got members, he's overtaken the Tory party this last week in terms of party members. He is now, and Reform are now, a real force in British politics.
Kevin Marr, I think you're absolutely right. And that big More in Common report, the poll a couple of days ago, showed that the red wall could easily become a turquoise wall. This is an era of high volatility. People who voted for the Labour Party historically, they voted for Boris Johnson because it was get Brexit done. They didn't didn't get Brexit done. Now they perhaps voted back to the Labour Party. They're seeing the country, in their eyes, perhaps not for the better. So that's all up for grabs. Could I ask you quickly about optimism? One word that came out of Mr Farage's speech there was that we are optimistic. There is a buzz. You know, when the Brexit Party won the European election in 2019, it was won by being optimistic and bright about the future. Sir Keir Starmer's speech, it sounded like he had half a bottle of Baileys and a wedge of Stilton. He was practically half asleep.
Well, I mean, to be fair to Keir Starmer, he's had a pretty tough Christmas with his brother dying as well. So he's perhaps a little bit in a reflective mood, and couldn't blame him for that. And Kemi Badenoch similarly is in a mood to sort of say, look, I can't pretend that the Tory party's had a good year either. So I've got to try and talk perhaps the glass is half full, not overflowing. Nigel Farage, in a sense, can do that. He can. Often Farage and often Reform and Brexit is seen as a kind of reactive thing. It's angry people banging their fists on the wall and wailing into the night. And what he's managed to do here, I think rather cleverly, is to try and take the language of optimism, political optimism and confidence, and actually project that. And I think that's pretty clever going into 2025. There's a big electoral test for Reform and the Conservatives, mainly in the county council elections that take place in May, and lots of district councils as well, some of which will be probably abolished over the next few years anyway. But at this point, it's a great electoral test for Farage versus Badenoch. Labour's not really in this game because it doesn't really have much electoral strength in the county council areas. So this is one really where Kemi Badenoch has really got to show that she's stopped the rot, that she's managed to hold back Nigel Farage from supplanting the Tories. And at this stage, looking at the polls, looking at the state of play, I wouldn't bet against Nigel Farage sweeping the board in the county council elections in May.
Kevin Marr, astonishing, a former Labour advisor and a press officer. How about a new year, a new you? Get a job for Reform. You sound like you're completely on board.
I think you've got to give credit where credit's due, and I think you've got to read the game fairly. And any reading of the game says, as I say, that Reform is now a real part of British politics. And I think anybody that underestimates them, whether you're in the red team or the blue team or anyone else, if you underestimate them, then you're going to come up short. I think for now, they're a very potent electoral threat, and I don't think either Labour or the Conservatives have got the full measure of what their appeal is and how they could actually lose voters to them. As I say, Farage haunts their dreams, but they don't have an answer for him yet.
I'm sure he'll be delighted to learn that. Kevin Marr, magnanimous and generous in your praise. And once again, Happy New Year to you, and hope to see much more of you in 2025. Martin. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, back to the studio. Some reactions to an astonishing... That guy used to support Labour. Sounds like now he's a Nigel Farage supporter. I'm joined by the political commentator, Kane Blackwell, and the journalist, Sarah Louise Robertson. Kane, I'm going to start with you this time. So, Kevin Marr there seems quite charmed, quite wooed by the fact a potent political force. As a Conservative, are you one of those people having sleepless nights, haunted by the spectre of Nigel Farage rattling his chains?
Well, I think every Conservative should, quite frankly. And if we don't actually wake up and realise that, people are they're not with us at the moment. And if we don't realise that actually we need to be the disruptors, we need to be the reformers in a way, and actually be a party of, be a bit of a rebel, actually.
A lot of Tories are becoming reformers.
Well, they are. But I mean,
they're joining the party.
They are. And what I would say is, actually Nigel's message, I do think he looked very prime ministerial. He looked, and it was a beautiful video, quite frankly. It was really well made. But what I do think that Nigel and Reform need to work on slightly is what solutions do they have to the problems that they address. These are really, really important problems. And I wish the Conservative Party was talking about these issues, talking about, net zero, talking about immigration, but also what we need to do is be a bit of, have a bit of contrition on these issues as well, and actually realise and say to people, we did make mistakes.
I wonder if they can talk on those issues with one voice, though, because Sarah Louise Robertson, isn't that the point? Half of the Conservative Party, Nigel Farage would claim, would be better off than the Liberal Democrats. Can they talk with one voice on net zero? Can they talk with one voice on immigration? And actually, is that the problem and the opportunity for Nigel Farage?
Well, it is the opportunity for him to come in and rescue and provide a service for those voters who are crying out for help on the issues affecting them, such as border controls, such as the cost of living crisis. He's right, you're right, Martin. The Conservative Party is dying because it's divided. That's what we're seeing happened with the last government. They couldn't agree on anything. Half of them really should have belonged in the Liberal Democrats, and the other half actually should belong in Reform. And obviously we've seen politicians cross over, haven't they, to the Reform Party. And the Reform Party is gaining ground every single day on Conservative voters.
Do you think we'll see some more defections in 2025 from the Conservatives?
Yes, I do. I think there'll be other defections going over. I mean, I can't say who those people are going to be, but I certainly do think we'll see other people going across to Reform because they're gaining so much ground. They've got the momentum. They understand what the electorate wants in this country.
Very quick final word, Kane Blackwell. Do you think, is that another thing that's keeping Tories awake at night? There might be another big-name defection to Farage's mob.
Yeah, I mean, you can't rule it out. And I think that's the important thing that we all as Conservatives have to realise, that, you know, if we don't start to change fundamentally, you know, democratise the party, you know, come up with a real clear prospectus for the country and what we want to do, more people are going to go to Reform. And if Kemi doesn't sort this out very quickly, it could end very badly for the Conservative Party. And I don't want to see that happen, but it's a possibility.
Okay, great stuff. We have to leave it there. Sarah Louise Robertson and Kane Blackwell, excellent. As ever, thank you very, very much for your expert insight. Now, plenty more to come on the show, including all the latest to that, the horrific horror attack in which at least 10 people have been killed and 35 more now injured and hospitalised after a vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans. The incoming President Donald Trump has slammed the attack as an act of pure evil. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Business News Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News Thank You boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunj Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunj and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror, and I've heard this story so many times before,
yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan,
yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just, like, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 27 minutes past 5 with me, Martin Daubney, on New Year's Day here on GB News. Now, as the new year starts, millions across the country apparently are deciding on their New Year's resolutions, with almost half of us expected to choose improving our health. And more than 15 million of us are expected to take part in Dry January. Not me, but that's causing worry within the hospitality sector, and with some justification. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson has this report.
As the new year bursts into life, millions across the country will be setting themselves a resolution for 2025. According to research from Finder.com, 3 in 4 Brits will be setting themselves a New Year's resolution in 2025. That's an 8% increase on last year. But what's topping the table of what we're leaving behind in 2024? 43% say changes to their health is part of their resolution. 32% say money, 30% have a family-related resolution, 26% say self-improvement, and 22% want to travel more. But what are the people of Birmingham thinking?
Try and eat a little bit more healthier, get more holidays, you know, try and take a bit more holiday, a bit more relaxation, you know.
Be a better person and help others that can help. I want to give more to like the community and like charities and stuff.
Well, I packed up smoking twice, and I've packed up before. And I packed it for 2 years, so I'm going to really give it a good go.
And giving up the booze?
No, never. I do like a drink, and that's one thing I can't give up, sorry.
I'll have to get over the Christmas drink first, and then I'll think about that one, you know.
These people might not be keen, but the charity behind giving up drink for January, Alcohol Change UK, say 15.5 million of us will have an alcohol-free start to the year. However, with 29% of the country giving up drinking, how are pubs mitigating the impact it could have on business? Associate Marketing Director at Davenport's Brewery, Katie McPhillamy, says there's concern within the industry.
Christmas is great, but you use Christmas to bank across the year. So, you know, you plan for the whole year. So January is always a worry. We always know we're going to be impacted. And the measures that we put in to try and counteract that are really important. So you really have to look at the foodie offering so that you bring them in, and maybe they do mocktails if they're not drinking, so that we're still getting the traffic through the doors. That is really important. Bigger chains can sustain it a bit more and bring in different offers to try and draw people in on the footfall. But, you know, that would be the message from the hospitality industry. Use it or lose it, really.
Whether it's a diet, the dream trip away, or swapping booze for something a little less strong, 2025 might be the year you finally do it. Jack Carson, GB News, Birmingham.
Dry January. Well, let's discuss that now with my panel. I'm still joined by Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Sarah Louise, I'm going to come to you first because you're one of those smug 15.5 million that are doing Dry January.
I am, Martin, and I love it. It makes me feel so virtuous and healthy. Look, as a showbiz journalist, my job is to go to lots and lots of showbiz parties where champagne's on tap and razz it up. So my liver does take a battering towards the end of the year. So coming into January, it's like, right, this is a month, everything goes quiet, everything just like slows down a little bit, and it's a chance for me just to like repair a little bit of my liver and just feel healthy and better going into awards season for when that kicks off.
I've got to say, Sarah Louise, I'm glad people like you vacate the pubs. It gets us back to the hardcore. It's back to the proper drinkers. For part-timers, stand aside. Kane Blackwell, what's your take on Dry January? Are you taking part?
I'm not. I mean, to be honest, I don't really drink that much anyway. But, you know, I do think that actually it is a real problem for the hospitality sector, as the package was saying. You know, it's really, really important that we actually do support our pubs, particularly, you know, independent pubs across the country, because, you know, they've for many, many years, it's been dying, and our pub culture has been dying as well. So actually, I do think there is an opportunity for, yes, Dry January, but maybe also, you know, Pub January as well. Go out to your local pub and you know, even if it's just for a meal or whatever it is, or a soft drink, whatever it is, but go and support your pubs.
Absolutely. Here to that. Our drink's that about 2 minutes past 6. Thank you very much. Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. You've been excellent today. Thank you very, very much. There's still lots more to come between now and 6 o'clock, including more than 36,000 migrants crossed the Channel into Britain in 2024, marking an astonishing 25% increase compared to 2023. Can Labour turn this mess around? But first, it's time for your headlines, and here's Sophia Wenzel.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 5:31. At least 10 people have been killed after a truck ploughed through a crowd celebrating the New Year in New Orleans. The FBI are investigating this morning's deadly attack as an act of terrorism. At least 35 people have been injured after the man drove a pickup truck into a large crowd on the corner of the popular Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of the city. Local police said the driver of the vehicle got out and opened fire on police, with 2 officers shot but in a stable condition, while the suspect was declared dead at the scene. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time, and people are being asked to avoid the area. President Joe Biden has released a statement following this morning's deadly attack. The US president spoke a short while ago while leaving Delaware Airport, refusing to give much away.
More to say in the next hour or so following what's going on in New Orleans. I'm not going to comment till I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says his administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as it investigates and recovers from this morning's attack. Posting on Truth Social, the president-elect said, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in the country, it turned out to be true." Police have not indicated the nationality or identity of the attacker. In other news now, domestic energy prices have risen, with more pain for bill payers to follow. The second increase in Ofgem's price cap this winter takes effect today and means someone paying by direct debit and using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £1,738 a year. Bill payers are being urged to submit a meter reading to avoid overpaying on estimated usage. Bills are about 50% higher than pre-COVID levels, and analysts predict they will rise by a further 3% in April. Now, a major incident has been declared in Greater Manchester after flooding forced homes to be evacuated and closed train lines and roads following heavy rain. More than 100 flood warnings have been issued across the UK as rain batters parts of the country on the first day of 2025. Greater Manchester Police said people became trapped in their homes without running water, while others were rescued from cars stranded in floodwaters. Meanwhile, a 3-day snow warning has been issued for almost all of England and parts of Scotland this weekend, as the Met Office has warned rural communities could become cut off. And to Scarborough now, where brave people have been ringing in the New Year's Day by jumping in the freezing cold sea. The 2025 New Year's Day dip has over 150 dippers, helping raise thousands of pounds to help those most in need in the Scarborough community. Hundreds turned out on the South Shore to see Scarborough's mayor welcome the dippers before the town crier sent them on their way into the cold North Sea. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
We've got some breaking news for you now on the New Orleans terror attack, and the attacker has now been identified, named as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. At least 10 people were killed and 30 more injured after a vehicle was driven into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of this morning. And to discuss this latest revelation, I'm now joined in the studio by the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, welcome back. This is quite a development. With a name like that, of course, the rumour mill will go into overdrive about the motivation. And I believe, actually, There is some other information, and in particular, there were reports early on about a flag that was attached to the back of this vehicle that was used as a deadly weapon.
Right.
The flag, we've seen pictures, was covered up by law enforcement operators. And what's the detail on that?
Well, we don't really know, but I suspect that it's a flag that would indicate some sort of terrorist affiliation. This is all happening very quickly. I talked to New Orleans 5 minutes ago. They sent me the clip from local news that identified the name. So, I think this is probably one of the reasons why they delayed the press conference, Martin, from 5 to 7 or 11 to 1 Central Time in the U.S.
And I think we're expecting that press conference, I think, round about 7 p.m. That'd be on the Farrar show. Actually, I'm covering that show tonight. So 7 p.m, I think, we're anticipating that press conference. Just to repeat that breaking news, if you're tuning in. So the New Orleans attacker has now been identified as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. Killed 10 people. 2 police officers were shot and injured, and 30 more pedestrians were injured after that vehicle was driven at speed into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of the morning. Just to repeat that, the attacker has been identified now as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. It's the latest on the breaking story, and we're going to bring you more later on. Then more on this in just a moment and throughout the rest of the show with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, things will turn much colder across the UK. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, but some snow and ice in places as well. Low pressure is moving away to the south and east of the UK now, taking wind and rain with it, allowing a northerly airstream to become established across the UK, and this will introduce some wintry hazards as we go through the coming few days. Wet and windy weather then clearing away to the southeast as we go through the evening. Some wintry showers across the central slice of the UK, also easing as we go through the overnight period. So showers becoming mainly confined to areas exposed to the north to northwesterly airstream. And again, those showers will be wintry in places, especially across the hills towards the north, but to some lower levels in places as well. A widespread frost forming, temperatures in towns and cities below freezing, down to -7 or -8 in a few parts of Scotland, and there'll be some ice around to start the day on Thursday as well. So starting Thursday then, further wintry showers moving in from the north into the northern parts of Scotland, a mixture of hail, sleet and some snow in places. Southern parts of Scotland mostly fine to start the day, some clear weather but very chilly here, some frost and some ice in places. A few wintry showers into Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland seeing the best of the quieter weather to start the day here. A few showers also across the Irish Sea areas, down across North Sea coastal areas of eastern England, but elsewhere lots of sunshine around, and that's the way of things as we go through Thursday. There will be plenty of sunshine, certainly across inland areas, but it will be a cold day wherever you are with a north to northwesterly wind blowing, and further showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream, particularly into northern Scotland, down across parts of Northern Ireland, the west of England, and down some North Sea coasts at times too. Temperatures are at the very best up to 6 or 7 degrees, but add on the effect of that north to northwesterly wind and feeling close to, if not below freezing in 1 or 2 places. As we go into the evening, the showers will tend to become more and more confined to those coasts, so a frost and some ice forming again as we go into the overnight period. Again, a very cold night developing, and we hold on to a mixture of sunshine and wintry showers on Friday with a risk of some more persistent rain and some snow moving in from the southwest as we go into the weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. It's 5:41. Just a reminder of that breaking news story that the New Orleans attacker has now been identified as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. At least 10 people were killed and 30 more injured after his vehicle was driven into a crowd of people in central New Orleans in the early hours of this morning. And to pick through some more detail, I'm rejoined in the studio by the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, this is an astonishing breakthrough. There's been a huge amount of speculation, of course, about the modus operandi, the motivation.
Right.
The naming of the individual here tells us quite a lot, and also reports of the flag on the vehicle, which the police covered up. What are we hearing about the potential origin of that flag?
Yeah, I just heard from my people on the ground that it's an ISIS flag. Unconfirmed, but it's been covered up for hours, and so it probably wouldn't shock anybody. The real suspicion now, the question is whether the terrorist came across the open border, and it looks like there's indications that that's quite a possibility, because allegedly the truck came through the border in the last 48 hours. This is exactly what the Republicans have been talking about for years, that not only is it tragic for Americans that the border is open, but so many of the people that have come in, the illegal migrants, so many of them are convicted felons. 58,000 that we know about. 58,000 brand new convicted felons running around the country.
And of course, we don't know at this point if Shamsa Din Jabbar was in the country illegally. We don't know that yet. Of course, that detail may or may not come out later on. It will, of course, in the fullness of time. And of course, just to repeat this, unconfirmed reports of that being an ISIS flag. It's been reported by CNN in America. It's been reported locally, right? But again, it's just to repeat, that is unconfirmed. But I believe you say that Donald Trump has reacted.
And he's, he said, first he said some nice things about the policemen in New Orleans, of course, and expressed sympathy for the families. But he also said, when I said that criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. And it's not just this incident. It was the subway burning, a subway homicide last weekend in New York City. It was Laken Riley, the nursing student, being killed in Georgia. So not only are they illegal migrants that have broken the law to come into the country, but then they're released from their crimes by the George Soros-backed DAs in these blue cities. So it's a tragedy, an absolute tragedy.
And we've got some live pictures on our screens there. That's from the actual site of the incident, where the vehicle was driven at high speed into the crowd. 10 killed, 35 injured and hospitalised. We know, Greg Swenson, there's an exchange of gunfire. We now know the identity of this individual, Shamsa Din Jabbar, 42 years old, got out and started firing what it sounded like on videos we've seen as semi-automatic fire.
Right.
Police exchanged fire. 2 police officers were injured, mercifully not killed. And you also have some information for us earlier about controlled explosions and explosive devices.
Yeah, so the police, obviously blocked off these 8 blocks, and they found other IEDs in the area, and not just on that street, but in New Orleans in general, or at the very least in the French Quarter. They exploded at least one of them. According to my friend on the ground, the police yelled "fire in the hole" and exploded one of them. There's also indications that there's other people involved with this, and you had the fire in the St. Roch neighborhood, which was in a rental of some sort. We don't know if it was an Airbnb or a regular apartment. But so you have a lot of pieces being, a lot of pieces of the puzzle coming together now. And I think it's validating some of the concerns that we had when this first happened. But it looks like the press conference, they're gathering, and they're hopefully will put all this together at 7 o'clock.
That's about an hour and a quarter's time. Just to repeat, this is the media reporting this. This has not yet been confirmed by police. Perhaps that might happen at 7 p.m. US media is reporting the identity of the attacker as 42-year-old Shamsa Din Jabbar. That's just come out. Breaking news there from American media. And we'll see if the police confirm that at that press conference, anticipated in about an hour and 15 minutes' time. Greg Swenson, thank you for bringing us up to speed on what is a very fast-moving and concerning story. We'll have much more on that throughout the rest of the show. And that's next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joining me now is food historian and author of Christmas with Dickens, Pen Vogler. Pen, let's start with Christmas Carol. Did Christmas Carol, A Christmas Carol, change Britain's view of Christmas?
I think it did, enormously. Before then, people were beginning to think, as they do now, that Christmas might be being a little bit commercial. It was too much food and drink, not enough kind of seriousness or not enough kind of love and family. And what Dickens did with A Christmas Carol was show people who were coming to the cities, who were kind of losing their rural history, a new way of celebrating Christmas, that a real, just a family could get together and love and kind of get around the table together. And whereas before, a lot of those kind of Christmas dishes would have been seasonal, lots of people would have eaten them at different times of the year, Dickens does two things. He takes the goose, which is what the Cratchits are going to eat, and he turns it to a turkey, much bigger, meatier, kind of more generous. And then he takes this thing that he never calls Christmas pudding in A Christmas Carol. There's no Christmas pudding. He only calls it plum pudding, and he anchors it to that day. And interestingly, after then, people start publishing recipes for Christmas pudding, and it starts getting its name, Christmas pudding, from plum pudding. And I think all of that really comes from A Christmas Carol.
You say becomes a Christmas pudding almost immediately after A Christmas Carol is published.
Yes, I mean, it's occasionally called Christmas pudding before, but not often. And then a very famous for the time, the kind of Delia Smith of her day, lady called Eliza Acton, publishes a recipe called The Author's Christmas Pudding in 1845. And we know she's a big Dickens fan because she sent a copy of her cookbook to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, on New Year's Day here on GB News. Now, more than 36,000 migrants crossed the Channel into Britain in 2024, marking an astonishing 25% increase compared to 2023, the year before. The final crossings of the year were carried out on December the 29th. Merry Christmas, Britain. We saw 291 migrants making their way to the UK from French shores in 6 boats. Now let's discuss this endless tide, which we seemingly cannot stem. I'm joined by the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Let's start with you, if we can this time, Kane. Smash the gangs is the motive of this government. Stop the boats was the motto of the last one. Neither of them worked. The gangs aren't getting the memos. The figures are going through the roof. Can anything be done to stem this tide? And more to the point, if the Labour Party don't get a handle on this, how imperilled are they in 2025?
Sure. Well, I think slogans aren't going to solve these problems. You know, we actually need plans and we need real, solid, deterrence. And the first thing that this Labour government did when they entered office was to scrap the Rwanda deterrent. Now, look, did it get off completely to the flying side?
Only 2 blokes went, to be fair.
But the point is, it didn't actually get off the ground in terms of...
Literally.
Well, literally, but because we didn't have those stronger protections that, you know, the government actually needed to put in place with the court cases and all that sort of stuff, and it just kept going on and on and on, when actually it was a really good plan. It was a world-leading plan, actually, and, you know, we're seeing European countries as well now looking at the Rwanda deterrent. Even President Trump has been reported to even be considering it as well. So, you know, the Labour Party are not serious on this issue. They don't care really about this issue, and they talk about smashing the gangs. The war on drugs and the war on gangs hasn't done anything. It hasn't changed the way. And if they think this is going to be the case, these gangs are nimble. They will adapt to the changes that whatever the people put in place. We need a strong deterrent to actually deter people from coming over in the first place.
Not only that, Sarah Louise Robertson, we don't just need a strong deterrent. We need a strong appetite to actually get stuck into this. And historically, we've seen the Labour Party being in favour of open borders. Now they're in power, the tough work begins. They talk tough, but nobody's listening on those boats, look. Nobody's listening over in Calais. The beaches are festooned with people queuing up to get over here. And this is just one of a raft of problems, pun intended. What about the winter fuel allowance? It's yet to have been cold this year. We saw last night the farmers lighting beacons of hope across the country. The farmers are in no mood to stand down. You get the feeling there could be so many problems, so many fronts the Labour Party are fighting, they won't ever get a chance to put any fresh information out to project to us.
I agree with you, Martin. If you thought 2024 was hard for people, you ain't seen nothing yet. 2025 is going to present even greater problems for this country, and something needs to be done about it. And the Labour government are just dragging us further and further down. They're not coming out with any sensible solutions. They're not affecting anything to effect positive change. All they're just doing is hitting Middle England, the taxpayer, further and further. And the people that they claim to want to protect, as you say, the elderly, the waspy women, all those promises that Keir Starmer made when he wanted to get into power, what have they done? They've just turned around and hit them with more punitive policies. It's absolutely disgraceful, and yet they just keep going on with this. And we know that the Labour Party lied. They lied back in 2004 as the evidence was uncovered when they said only 13,000 were going to come in from the EU when they opened the borders back then, 20 years ago.
Fair, the Conservatives
and look where we are
threw
now.
the borders open as well. I mean, over a million came in last year legally.
They've been a bit of an abject failure as well. We need someone to come in who's actually going to be tough on these issues, and the issue of illegal immigration is something that causes fear and panic among people.
Final 30 seconds to UK, and can the Conservative Party up their game and step in and get some votes out of this?
Well, I think they're going to have to, and what the Conservative Party needs to do is talk to the issues that actually matter to people. And going back to the point on Labour are, you know, at risk of becoming a reactive party and a reactive government rather than actually setting out a proper perspective to the country. And that's what they've got to ensure that they don't do.
We have to leave it there. Excellent New Year's Day kick-off there. Kane Blackwell, Sarah Louise Robertson, superb stuff. Thank you very much. That's all from me today, but I'm back at 7 p.m. I'll be hosting that live press conference from New Orleans on The Farrell Show. Next is Tubes & Co. with Darren Grimes. But first, here's your weather, and it's Marco.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, things will turn much colder across the UK. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, but some snow and ice in places as well. Low pressure is moving away to the south and east of the UK now, taking wind and rain with it, allowing a northerly airstream to become established across the UK, and this will introduce some wintry hazards as we go through the coming few days. Wet and windy weather then clearing away to the southeast as we go through the evening. Some wintry showers across the central slice of the UK, also easing as we go through the overnight period. So showers becoming mainly confined to areas exposed to the north to northwesterly airstream. And again, those showers will be wintry in places, especially across the hills towards the north, but to some lower levels in places as well. A widespread frost forming, temperatures in towns and cities below freezing. down to -7 or -8 in a few parts of Scotland, and there'll be some ice around to start the day on Thursday as well. So starting Thursday then, further wintry showers moving in from the north into the northern parts of Scotland, a mixture of hail, sleet and some snow in places. Southern parts of Scotland mostly fine to start the day, some clear weather but very chilly here, some frost and some ice in places. A few wintry showers into Northern Ireland, southern parts of Northern Ireland seeing the best of the quieter weather to start the day here. A few showers also across the Irish Sea areas, down across North Sea coastal areas of eastern England, but elsewhere lots of sunshine around, and that's the way of things as we go through Thursday. There will be plenty of sunshine, certainly across inland areas, but it will be a cold day wherever you are with a north to northwesterly wind blowing, and further showers feeding down in that north to northwesterly airstream, particularly into northern Scotland, down across parts of Northern Ireland, the west of England, and down some North Sea coasts at times too. Temperatures are at the very best up to 6 or 7 degrees, but add on the effect of that north to northwesterly wind and feeling close to, if not below freezing in one or two places. As we go into the evening, the showers will tend to become more and more confined to those coasts, so a frost and some ice forming again as we go into the overnight period. Again, a very cold night developing, and we hold on to a mixture of sunshine and wintry showers on Friday, with a risk of some more persistent rain and some snow moving in from the southwest as we go into the weekend. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
A Tesco store on a Scottish island has defied locals by ignoring pleas to stay closed on Sundays.
Tesco's has said that no member of staff in Stornoway would be forced to work on a Sunday and that it had received a significant amount of positive reaction to its plans.
Well, let's talk now to the Minister of the Reformed Presbyterian Church, Reverend Kenneth Stewart. Good morning to you, Reverend Stewart. You're trying to keep Sunday special, and if Tesco are going to open up, that means it won't be quite as special for you.
Well, yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yes, Tesco, for some reason, they claim it's not economic advantage, but for some reason they've decided to go against hundreds of years of tradition on this island and the deeply held religious convictions of many, many people, including, of course, their own customers who are really grieved by this decision. We come obviously from the standpoint that a day of rest is effectively mandatory. It's a human right, along with the other 10 commandments which have undergirded our moral and legal fabric in society. It actually enshrines the human right to a day of rest. And of course, in the UK, that's been eroded for many, many years. Incidentally, it's still far more respected on the continent. But for us here, the Sabbath or the day of rest has been very, very important. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. And for some reason, Tesco have decided just to go against that.
And Reverend Stewart, we were actually talking about this earlier, how in European countries, I mean, even in France, which is a secular country, still very few shops will open on a Sunday.
GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News, I'm Darren Grimes, standing in for Michelle Dewberry. Now, we'll be getting the latest on that awful attack in New Orleans. Now, the FBI are suggesting could be a terrorist attack. And then it will be back to normal programming as we debate which party leader had the best New Year's message. And politicians haven't been calling for officials who ignored the Rotherham grooming gang scandal to go to jail follows on from Elon Musk tweeting, "People at all levels of power in the UK need to be in prison. Why has justice taken so long?" And Labour's VAT raid on schools comes into place this month, but will it backfire? And my panel tonight, Aaron Bastani, co-founder of Novara Media, and Benedict Spence, writer and political commentator. First of all, though, we're going to get your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.